Chapter 2193. He's holding it upside down. Yi Xian felt quite embarrassed. He wasn't very familiar with this thing. After all, he didn't understand it. Yi Xian hurriedly turned the gun around and pulled the trigger. Bang! A ray of white light suddenly surged out from the muzzle, and then the space in an area of 300 kilometers started seething. It was an extremely shocking scene. As for Yi Xian, he hurriedly used the azure sword to form a shield in front of him. Bang! Even with the protection of the Qingxian sword shield, the terrifying recoil still sent Yi Xian flying thousands of feet away. However, the azure profound sword shield did not move at all. There was no problem at all. The spirit demon divine master's pupils constricted when the ray of white light surged out. In an instant, countless bolts of divine lightning were destroyed. It was like crushing dry weeds. In the next moment, the ray of white light had arrived before her. The spirit demon divine master was shocked, and she swiftly waved her right hand, causing an energy lightning shield to appear in front of her. Bang! The energy lightning shield suddenly exploded. Rumble! The spirit demon divine master was blasted over 30 kilometers away. As soon as she stopped moving, her body cracked like a spider web. However, it didn't shatter completely. Obviously, her strength was extremely terrifying. However, the bullet didn't vanish. It pierced through the spirit demon divine master's stomach and vanished into the starry sky. Wherever the bullet passed, time and space were directly annihilated. As a result, a bottomless chasm of time and space appeared in the spirit demon realm. The spirit demon divine master clenched her fists tightly, and countless bolts of black divine lightning flickered around her. After that, her body started to slowly recover. She'd resisted it. Yi Xian frowned slightly and said, "Xiao Ta, show off." "Oh, no, reload. Feed me 20,000 star god veins, 20,000 star god veins." Yi Xian's gun returned to Xiao Ta, and it didn't take long for it to appear in Yi Xian's hand. He aimed it at the spirit demon divine master. The latter's pupils constricted, and she exploded with rage. "How shameless. You actually used an external object. You're truly shameless." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "Then I won't use any external objects." As he spoke, he put away the small gun. The spirit devil priest was slightly stunned by this scene. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly leaped up and slashed his sword at her. The spirit demon divine master narrowed his eyes and was about to attack when Yi Xian suddenly pulled out his gun and pulled the trigger. Boom! A white light surged out, and Yi Xian was the first to be sent flying. Down below, the spirit demon divine master's pupils constricted as he roared, "You're disregarding martial ethics." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly waved her hands, and countless bolts of divine lightning gathered above her head, protecting her entire body. Rumble! The barrier instantly shattered. In the next moment, the white light blasted the spirit demon divine master tens of thousands of meters away. As soon as she stopped, her body shattered. Not only that, but her soul also disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. This spear directly blasted her into nothingness. The spirit demon divine master looked blankly at Yi Xian in the distance. Didn't you say you don't need it?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." The spirit demon divine master roared, "Then why do you still need it?" Yi Xian glanced at the spirit demon divine master. "I use it when I want to, and I don't use it when I don't want to. I'm just playing." "What, are you going to bite me?" The spirit demon divine master's eyes almost popped out of their sockets, and she directly breathed her last. She directly died from anger. Yi Xian shook his head slightly. This person only has strength, but his state of mind isn't anything special. If it was me, no one could kill me with words. Xiao Ta said, "Of course, after all, young lord is shameless." Yi Xian, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young lord, why aren't you crazy anymore?" Yi Xian said, "I'm crazy when I want to, and I don't. I'm just playing." Xiao Ta, Yi Xian didn't waste words with Xiao Ta. He turned around and swept his gaze across the surroundings. The next moment, the azure profound sword in his hand flew out. Continue the massacre. He was serious about this matter. No one was allowed to hurt Shaoan. The spirit demon divine master could no longer stop Yi Xian. Yi Xian directly killed his way into the city. At this moment, there were almost no spirit demon race experts left. Because of the battle between him and the spirit demon divine master, some had died, and some had escaped. This demon city was now an empty city. Yi Xian scanned the surroundings. After confirming that there were no spirit demon race experts, he suddenly leaped and slashed down with his sword. Chi! A sword ray slashed into the demon city. In an instant, the entire city shattered and turned into dust. Yi Xian turned around and left. As if he'd thought of something, he opened his palm, and the azure profound sword flew out. In a short while, a line of words appeared in the distant space. Build it if you have the guts. I'll come again next time. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and flew on his sword, vanishing into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian didn't leave the spirit demon world directly. Instead, he went to the Lin city from before. Many super experts of the spirit demon race were slumbering here. Yi Xian arrived on the city wall and glanced at the surroundings. A moment later, the azure profound sword suddenly flew out, and a bloody head fell slowly from the horizon. The spirit demon race experts in the dark were shocked and they saw this scene, and they retreated explosively. They didn't dare to watch in the dark anymore. Yi Xian arrived on the Lin city wall and glanced into the distance. There were hundreds of altars of various sizes in the city, and every single one of them contained a powerful aura. Some auras even made his heart palpitate. Very strong. That was what he felt. Yi Xian fell silent. Should he get rid of these slumbering powerhouses? His intuition told him that he couldn't. Moreover, once all these people woke up, he would be ganged up on. But leaving just like that would be letting the spirit demon race off too easily. At this thought, Yi Xian took out the small spear and fed it 20,000 star god veins. Then, he pointed the small spear at the Lin city. As if thinking of something, he fed it another 10,000 star god veins. Yi Xian's heart ached when he fed it. Because he only had less than 60,000 star god veins. These were all given to him by the Azure Lotus. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have a strand of them. If the pavilion master hadn't taken those spatial rings from the immortal treasure pavilion, at this thought, Yi Xian felt his heart ache. More than 1 billion. How many shots could he fire? If these 1 billion star god veins were in his hands, he would be able to soar. He would be able to shoot every day. Yi Xian sighed inwardly and stopped thinking about it. He pointed the small spear at the Lin city and pulled the trigger. Boom! A beam of white light gushed out from the muzzle. Yi Xian didn't look at it. As he was pushed back, he also hurriedly retreated. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the starry sky and used the azure profound sword to directly teleport outside. Spirit Demon Realm. The beam of white light directly entered the Lin city. In an instant, the entire Lin city boiled and began to burn. At this moment, a furious roar suddenly resounded from the Lin city. Who is it? The next moment, a terrifying force directly blasted the beam of white light. Rumble. The white light violently trembled and then exploded. At this moment, a burly spirit demon man appeared in the sky above the Lin city. His eyes were as deep as the starry sky, but at this moment, he didn't conceal his anger and killing intent. The burly man scanned the surroundings, but found nothing. The burly man suddenly turned his head and looked into the distance. Come out. As his voice fell, a spirit demon expert appeared in front of him. The spirit demon expert bowed deeply and then knelt down. Greetings. Left Hall Master. This person was the Left Hall Master of the Spirit Demon clan. He had an extremely high status. The left hall master's expression was cold. What happened? The spirit demon race powerhouse bowed again and recounted the sequence of events that had transpired. When he finished listening to the spirit demon expert, the left hall master's expression instantly became extremely unsightly. A city was slaughtered. The spirit demon clan was slaughtered. As if he thought of something, the left hall master suddenly said angrily, "Where's the spirit demon divine master? What is she doing? She actually slaughtered a city. This is simply a great humiliation." The spirit demon expert hesitated for a moment and then said, "The spirit demon divine master has died in battle, died in battle." The left hall master was stunned. Dead? The spirit demon expert nodded and said with a trembling voice, "Yes." The left hall master fell silent and his expression gradually calmed down. He was well aware of the spirit demon divine master's strength. He was someone who had fought with them in the great wilderness and was at the peak of the quantitative transformation realm. But he had actually died in battle. After a moment of silence, the left hall master said, "When did a super swordsman appear in the great wilderness?" The spirit demon expert hesitated for a moment and then said, "I heard from the spirit demon divine master that the young man doesn't seem to be from the great wilderness." The left hall master frowned slightly. "Not from the great wilderness?" The spirit demon expert nodded. "Yes." The left hall master's expression turned gloomy. "Since he isn't from the great wilderness, why did he come to our spirit demon clan to slaughter a city?" The spirit demon expert hesitated for a moment and then told the left hall master the cause of the matter. The left hall master's expression became even more gloomy. The spirit demon expert knelt on the ground and shivered, not daring to speak again. At this moment, the left hall master slowly closed his eyes. "No matter the reason, since this person slaughtered a city of our spirit demon clan, he can't live." With that, he suddenly vanished on the spot and arrived in the starry sky. He swept his gaze around, and in an instant, the entire spirit demon clan was enveloped by his divine sense. However, he didn't find any traces of Yi Xian. A short while later, the left hall master arrived at the demon city from before. When he saw the once glorious demon city reduced to ruins, his expression instantly turned gloomy, and he didn't conceal his killing intent at all. When he saw the line of words left behind by Yi Xian, his expression gradually became slightly ferocious. An extraordinary humiliation. This was simply an extraordinary humiliation. The spirit demon clan hadn't suffered such humiliation even when they faced the great wilderness all those years ago. The spirit demon experts in the surroundings trembled and didn't dare say a word. Suddenly, the left hall master said, "Rebuild the demon city." As he spoke, he looked towards the depths of the starry sky. If he doesn't continue his slaughter, then he's a coward. As soon as he finished speaking, he glanced at the surroundings and roared furiously, "Rebuild the city immediately. P.S. You have to work hard for the college entrance exam. Otherwise, you can only write like me in the future." To think that I almost got into Tsinghua University all those years ago. It was really just a little bit. Chapter 2194. Yi Xian returned to the great wilderness. Inside Xiaota, Yi Xian appeared in front of Enlancio. At this moment, Enlancio had returned to normal. After all, Yi Xian had many holy items for healing, especially those elixirs Yang Nianxue had left for him. They were truly invincible. Yi Xian said softly, "Are you all right?" Enlancio nodded, "I'm fine." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Little one, where's Sister Nian?" "Sister Nian." Enlancio said, "She left." Yi Xian frowned slightly, "Left?" Enlancio nodded slightly, "She said she's going to a place and will come find me after some time." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Then why did the spirit demon race find trouble with you?" Enlancio shook her head, "I don't know." Yi Xian's expression gradually turned cold. Clearly, the spirit demon race wanted to eat anyone they saw. Enlancio looked at Yi Xian, "Why are you here?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "I'm here to find you and Sister Nian." Enlancio asked, "You've been to the middle world?" Yi Xian nodded. And Lanxiao nodded slightly and said no more. Yi Xian was about to speak when he frowned. The next moment, he left Xiao Ta. Just as he left Xiao Ta, a middle-aged man stood in front of him. The middle-aged man smiled. Are you young Master Yi? Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. You are? The middle-aged man said with a smile, Great Wilderness Hall's ancestor. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Great Wilderness Hall? The ancestor smiled. When the spirit demon race attacked, all the forces in the Great Wilderness joined forces and formed this Great Wilderness Hall to resist the spirit demon race. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. The previous master looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, I am here to invite you to join the Great Desolate Palace. Just as Yi Xian was about to shake his head, his teacher suddenly said, The spirit demon realm's left reverend has woken up. He has rebuilt the demon city and threatened to wait for young Master Yi to return and slaughter him. Reconstruction. Yi Xian frowned. Really? The first teacher nodded. That's right. Young Master Yi, I'm afraid that the left hall master won't let you off. You must be careful, he. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and left. The previous master was slightly taken aback, and then said, Young Master Yi, you are. Where are you going? Yi Xian didn't even turn his head. Massacre the city. As soon as he finished speaking, he transformed into a wisp of sword light and vanished on the spot. On the spot, the teacher was silent. His eyes flashed and no one knew what he was thinking. Yi Xian used the green profound sword to return to the demon city. When he returned, the demon city had already been rebuilt. As soon as Yi Xian appeared in front of the demon city, the left hall master appeared in front of him. It was obvious that the left hall master was prepared. The left hall master looked at Yi Xian in front of him. You have guts. Yi Xian glanced at the spirit demon race experts behind the left hall master and smiled. What? You want to gang up on me? The left hall master waved his hand, and the spirit demon race experts retreated. The left hall master looked at Yi Xian. I will fight you one-on-one. You can use any external objects you want. Yi Xian nodded. All right. The left hall master's expression froze. Damn it. This person isn't going to be polite at all. His words were meant to provoke Yi Xian. He originally thought that Yi Xian would say, I don't care about using external objects. However, he did not expect that this guy would nod directly. Yi Xian didn't waste any words and suddenly vanished on the spot. Hiss. A ray of blood-colored sword light tore through the battlefield. A wisp of a ferocious smile appeared on the left hall master's face. He took a step forward and punched out. Golden light surged out from this punch, and the world was obliterated. Bang! An expanse of sword light shattered, and Yi Xian was blasted hundreds of kilometers away. As soon as he stopped, the left hall master suddenly appeared above Yi Xian, and then he suddenly smashed his fist down. Annihilation fist. Bang! With a single punch, the entire world turned into a giant whirlpool. The moment this fist descended, it would be the end of the world. Its strength was so terrifying. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. The azure sword in his right hand trembled slightly, and countless strands of time energy surged into his body. Bang! A terrifying aura swept out from Yi Xian's body. This time, Yi Xian didn't choose to increase his cultivation. He merely utilized the time energy. Yi Xian suddenly shot into the sky and slashed with his sword. Bang! His sword slashed against the vortex. In an instant, the entire vortex exploded apart, and countless rays of sword light shot through the sky. In an instant, the sky was instantly torn into countless tiny pieces. Meanwhile, Yi Xian and the left hall master retreated explosively. As they retreated, Yi Xian suddenly placed his sword between his brows and shouted furiously, "Sword!" As soon as he spoke, the world trembled violently. In the next moment, countless rays of sword light tore through space and arrived in the sky above the spirit demon world. There were millions of swords. The left hall master stared fixedly at Yi Xian. He slowly clenched his right hand, and a strand of terrifying energy silently condensed in his palm. Meanwhile, he suddenly pointed his sword at the left hall master, slash. As soon as he spoke, millions of swords slashed down from the starry sky. Hiss. In an instant, millions of holes were torn open in the sky above the spirit demon world, and the dense strand of sword energy surged down towards the left hall master like a storm. Millions of strands of sword energy surged down, and then the entire spirit demon world trembled. A wisp of ferocity flashed through the left hall master's eyes, and then he suddenly stomped his right foot against the ground. His figure shot into the sky, and then he smashed his fist forward, World Splitter. World Splitter. The entire spirit demon world split apart with this punch. The entire spirit demon world had split apart. At the instant that his fist was smashed forward, countless rays of sword energy were obliterated, and it was utterly destructive. All the rays of sword energy were obliterated while the left hall master's expression changed drastically. Because Yi Xian had suddenly charged into the city. In the next moment, a ray of sword energy exploded from within the city, and then the entire city was instantly blasted into pieces. The city had been destroyed. The left hall master's expression instantly became ferocious when he witnessed this scene, die. As soon as he finished speaking, he clenched his right hand forward, and then space suddenly exploded apart somewhere in the city, and then a figure retreated repeatedly. It was Yi Xian. Yi Xian hadn't lost anything because his green profound sword had transformed into a shield that stood in front of him. The left hall master stared fixedly at Yi Xian with a ferocious expression on his face, die. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward. This charge directly blasted space into pieces, and then a terrifying force instantly arrived in front of Yi Xian. His formidable force was sufficient to shatter everything. Yi Xian issued a command in his heart, and then the green profound sword and shield suddenly transformed into a net, and then the left hall master's fist smashed against the net. Bang! The net sank down, but it didn't shatter. Moreover, when the net returned to normal, the left hall master's terrifying force was reflected back to his right hand. Bang! The left hall master instantly retreated explosively. After he stopped moving, the left hall master was stunned. Reflected it back? The net of swords in front of him had actually reflected his power. After all, the force of that punch of his could shatter the heavens and the earth. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. Actually, he had just had a sudden thought. When two forces collided, an even greater force would be produced. In other words, the effects of force were mutual and could be multiplied. The first thing he thought of was defense. It wasn't a problem for the green profound sword to transform into a sword shield to block the force, but why didn't he transform the green profound sword into a net? Just like in the secular world, if one punched someone, the person would definitely feel pain, but so would one's own body. What if one punched cotton? Simply put, it was using softness to overcome hardness. However, if one transformed it into an elastic net, then as long as the net was hard enough, it would rebound when one punched it. Reality had proven that he was right. At that moment, as long as the green profound sword wasn't destroyed, he would always be in an invincible position. Unless his opponents attacked him in a group and he couldn't defend against them. In the distance, the left hall master glared at Yi Xian. What kind of divine object is that? It had to be said that he was extremely shocked at that moment. He knew very well how powerful his punch had been, but he had never expected that the sword in front of him would be able to block it and even rebound it. Ridiculous. It was too ridiculous. Yi Xian issued a command in his heart, and the green profound sword returned to his grasp. A moment later, he suddenly slashed towards the right. Hiss! A ray of light tore through the sky, and it instantly tore the entire city into pieces. Yi Xian gazed at the left hall master who had an unsightly expression on his face, you build again, and I'll do it again. I'll slaughter every time I build it. As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of light suddenly flickered beneath his feet, and then he vanished on the spot. The left hall master had a gloomy expression on his face. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded from behind him, build again. Tell him to do it again. The left hall master was shocked when he heard this, and then he hurriedly turned around and bowed respectfully. After Yi Xian returned to the Grand Wilderness, he immediately returned to Xiao Ta. At this moment, he was quite excited. Based on the thoughts he'd had just now, he had another thought. If energy was mutual, then what if he utilized it to slash the future, the past, and the present? Quantitative change. At this moment, that was a phrase that Yi Xian had thought of. The realm above eternal was the boundless realm, and the realm above the boundless realm was quantitative change. What was quantitative change? It was a form of essence. The splitting and release of energy was like a piece of wood. If it was burned, then it would split. With such a foundation, he could allow his sword energy to attain an extremely terrifying level. Its might would multiply. Yi Xian acted as soon as he thought of this. He opened his palm, and the green profound sword appeared in his grasp. A moment later, it started to tremble, and then he released a strand of sword energy before starting to compress it like a madman. Unlike before, he wasn't just compressing it. At the same time, he was ceaselessly providing new strand of sword energy to replenish the core of the sword energy so that it wouldn't be crushed by him. Simply speaking, the sword energy was being compressed madly, and then it was growing stronger incessantly. He was looking for a point of splitting. Under his pressure, the strand of sword energy started to tremble violently. After an extremely long time, a strand of dazzling sword light suddenly erupted from the strand of sword energy, and along with the appearance of this sword light, Yi Xian was directly blasted 3 kilometers away. Moreover, when he stopped, his chest had split apart. On the other hand, the place where the strand of sword energy stood had become pitch black. Yi Xian was first stunned when he witnessed this scene, and then he turned around and hugged Enlanxiao who'd rushed over. He hugged Enlanxiao and gave her a fierce kiss, and then he roared with laughter. Little Un, I'm truly a genius. I'm truly an extraordinary genius. If the Tao of the sword doesn't have me, Yi Xian, then it would be a dark night. Ha! Enlanxiao gazed at Yi Xian. Why did you kiss me? Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, Did I kiss you? I didn't. Enlanxiao was speechless. Chapter 2195. Enlanxiao looked at the excited Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Shaoan, I just discovered a brand new cultivation method. It's called quantitative change. As he spoke, he told Shaoan about his previous discovery. Enlanxiao frowned slightly. Is it really possible? Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. It's really possible. You can give it a try. Enlanxiao hesitated for a moment before she nodded and started to give it a try. A short while later, a trace of excitement flashed in her eyes. It's really possible. Yi Xian smiled. I want to use it in my sword technique. Enlanxiao nodded. Sure. Yi Xian said, I'm going into closed-door cultivation for a period of time. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Enlanxiao frowned slightly on the spot. Did I forget something? Yi Xian found a quiet mountain peak and sat cross-legged on the ground while the green profound sword floated before him. Meanwhile, Xiao Ta was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, Shut up, it has nothing to do with you. Xiao Ta, in the following time, Yi Xian started to study this quantitative change. Quantitative change. He didn't cultivate level by level because he didn't cultivate realms and didn't need to follow a routine. As long as he had money and resources, he could cultivate any realm he wanted. Moreover, he felt that this quantitative change might be slightly different from other quantitative changes. As for what the difference was, he didn't know because he wasn't too familiar with the other quantitative change. Cultivation knew no time. In the blink of an eye, 10 years passed. Of course, only a day had passed in the outside world. Yi Xian first started to try sword draw to determine life and death. Because sword draw to determine life and death was superimposed, this sword technique was most suitable for fission. Countless strands of sword qi superimposed and then caused the core sword qi to fission. Yi Xian tried over and over again to find the most perfect fission point. Just like that, after a few years, Yi Xian finally found the perfect fission point after repeated attempts and grasped it. Somewhere in the starry sky, Yi Xian stood with a sword in his hand. It was an ordinary sword. Yi Xian closed his eyes. Calm down. Focus. After a while, Yi Xian suddenly pulled out his sword and slashed. As the sword fell, countless afterimages overlapped. In that instant, he had stacked 30,000 swords. The instant the 30,000 swords overlapped, the sword qi split. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the star domain within a radius of several million kilometers was annihilated. Annihilating a star field with a single sword strike. Moreover, the sword in his hand was not the Qingxian sword. If it was the Qingxian sword, its power would be doubled. However, after this slash, Yi Xian's entire body seemed to have been sucked dry. His whole body was so weak as if he had done that kind of thing. Soft. His legs went soft. Everything was soft. That was what Yi Xian was feeling at this moment. Meanwhile, Enlanxiu appeared in front of Yi Xian. She walked over to Yi Xian and supported Yi Xian up. Yi Xian's body suddenly went limp, and he who was originally able to stand directly fell into Enlanxiu's arms. He fell into her arms. Enlanxiu's figure stiffened. Yi Xian's countenance was pale, and he said weakly, "I wasn't able to control it. I don't have any strength left." Enlanxiu hesitated for a moment and said, "Can you stand?" Yi Xian shook his head slightly. "Let me lie down for a while." "Just a while will be enough." Enlanxiu hesitated for a short while, but she didn't refuse in the end. Yi Xian lay in Enlanxiu's arms while Enlanxiu sat on an empty seat, and the surroundings of the obliterated starry sky were completely silent. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Little one, did you succeed?" Enlanxiu nodded. "I did." Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he said, "So quickly?" Enlanxiu nodded. "I did it a year ago." Yi Xian's face froze when he heard this. She did it a year ago. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled bitterly. Little N's natural talent is truly monstrous. Little N suddenly said, "How did you think of using such a method?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Battle. Battle." Actually, the reason he had such thoughts was because of the battle with the spirit fiend god and the other experts from the spirit demon race. He truly felt that battle was the best method to improve himself. Ceaselessly force himself and ceaselessly improve himself. Enlanxiu spoke softly, "You're walking very quickly." Yi Xian fell silent. Actually, even he felt that he was walking quite quickly. Should I slow down a little? He'd had such a thought in the past, but what was the outcome? After he attained a certain level of attainment, he wanted to go even higher. There was no end to learning. If he only wanted to act cool, then he just had to return to Qingcheng and he would have endless opportunities to act cool. But what was the point of that? Life was only interesting when it was a little difficult. Meanwhile, Enlanxiu suddenly said, "Your goal is to surpass the 3 sword strikes?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." Enlanxiu nodded slightly, "I'll go with you." Yi Xian looked at Enlanxiu, and he suddenly felt slightly dazed as he gazed at the peerlessly beautiful face before him. Shit! It's the feeling of being moved. Actually, he'd been moved a long time ago. Enlanxiu lowered her head to look at Yi Xian. "Why are you looking at me?" Yi Xian smiled lightly, "Little one, do you still remember the first time we met?" Enlanxiu nodded. Yi Xian suddenly stretched out his hand to grab Enlanxiu's hand. Enlanxiu's hand trembled slightly, and she instinctively wanted to struggle free. However, Yi Xian held her hand tightly. Helpless, and Lanxiu could only give up. Yi Xian spoke softly, now that I think about it, it seems like it was yesterday. At that time, you were the youngest kingdom scholar of our state of Jiang, and also the most monstrous genius of our state of Jiang. You were so dazzling that others didn't dare look at you directly. And Lanxiu lowered her head slightly and didn't speak. Yi Xian smiled, do you still remember Yi Lang? And Lanxiu nodded, the reincarnated person. Yi Xian laughed, actually, I'm quite grateful to him because if it wasn't for him, you might not have come to Azure City, and if you didn't come to Azure City, I might not have met you. If I didn't meet you, then even if I surpassed the 3 sword strikes, what meaning would there be in my life? When he spoke up to here, he looked at Little N's eyes. To me, a myriad of sword daos are inferior to a single smile from Little N. Xiao Ta was speechless. And Lanxiu lowered her head to look at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian looked straight at Lanxiu. Little N, I like you. Do you like me? Simple and direct. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Lanxiu's body trembled slightly. She didn't expect Yi Xian to be so direct. For a moment, her heart was in a mess and she didn't know how to answer. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, if you're not speaking, then it means you like me. And Lanxiu was just about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly stood up and kissed her on the lips. If you like a woman, then don't be coy. Go. Go directly. Hesitation will lead to defeat. Love doesn't come flying, it comes chasing. If you don't chase, how can you bring the beauty home? To chase a woman, there were only 4 mantras: be bold, careful, thick-skinned, and rich. Yi Xian didn't chase many women, but he was very clear that if he met someone he liked, he must not let her go. Because many times, missing a moment meant missing a lifetime. When he turned back, the person he loved would already be someone else's wife. If he didn't confess, she would be someone else's. Life is short, why leave regrets? As for being thick-skinned, if he didn't even dare to confess, then what was the use of having face? As long as he was thick-skinned and courageous, he dared to ask a female ghost to go on maternity leave. And Lanxiu was directly stunned by Yi Xian's kiss. When did Yi Xian become so abrupt? But why wasn't she angry? Why wasn't she angry? And Lanxiu felt her heart beat faster and faster. She really wanted to push Yi Xian away, but at this moment, she discovered that the strength within her body seemed to have disappeared, and she couldn't muster up the slightest bit of strength. After a very, very long time, Yi Xian released Lanxiu. He looked at Lanxiu, who was close at hand, and faintly smiled. When I was in Qingcheng, I already had this thought. And Lanxiu looked at Yi Xian. What do you like about me? Yi Xian said, I like everything about you. And Lanxiu looked straight at Yi Xian. Specifics. Yi Xian shook his head. I can't tell you the specifics. And Lanxiu lowered her head slightly, and no one knew what she was thinking. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, I only know that when I first met you, I was stunned by your beauty. Everyone loves beauty, and I'm no exception. If you want to blame something, you can only blame yourself for being too beautiful. Xiao Ta and Lanxiu looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian continued, later on, when I interacted with you, you were a proud and lofty woman of heaven, and at that time, I was just a nameless abandoned child of the Yi family. But you didn't look down on me in the slightest. On the contrary, when the Yi family was trying to harm me, you even lent a hand and gave me a token to go to Kuraki Academy. When he spoke up to here, he shook his head slightly. I don't know if these are the reasons why I like you. I only know that I like you, and when I see you, I feel happy, and my heart beats faster. Love? I don't know. I only know that I want to be with you forever. It's that simple. And Lanxiu fell silent for a long time before she suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand lightly, and then she said in a light voice, I don't regret meeting you, and I'm glad that we met. Yi Xian roared with laughter, and then he picked Lanxiu up. And Lanxiu looked at Yi Xian, who was just inches away from her, and her gaze was slightly dazed. The scene from when they first met appeared in her mind once more. Love? She didn't understand. Because she had never loved before, and this was the first time. She only knew that she liked being with Yi Xian, and there was no other reason. It was that simple. When she was with her master, Marshal Godin, her master had once told her that if she loved someone, then love them. Don't miss out on life. She was actually happy that Yi Xian had opened his heart to her just now because she wasn't good at expressing herself. If she had to express herself, then she might have waited for 10,000 years before saying it. Fortunately, Yi Xian had expressed himself. She liked the seemingly honest Yi Xian of the past, but she also liked the bold and thick-skinned Yi Xian of the present. What was love? Love his good points, love his bad points, and be able to share his wealth and suffering with him. The path of Tao Yi was endless, and it was filled with endless loneliness. If she gave up everything, then even if she reached the peak of the martial Tao, what was the point? When she thought up to there, Enrich hugged Yi Xian lightly. In the distant Milky Way galaxy, a woman was walking slowly by the sea, and her long hair fluttered lightly as the sea breeze blew. It was a woman in a plain dress. At this moment, the woman in a plain dress suddenly stopped, and she looked at the distant sea and said softly, "Big brother." As soon as she finished speaking, she flicked her sleeve. A myriad of sword qi instantly covered the entire surface of the sea, and the sword qi formed Yi Xian's image. As she looked at Yi Xian's image, a wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of the woman's mouth. The path of Tao Yi was endless. But she had already reached the peak. In terms of strength, there was no one in the world who could kill her, and there was no one she could not kill. Eternal life? She had already understood life and death countless years ago. As long as she was willing, her clone could live forever. As for her main body, it had long surpassed life and death. The end of the universe? Even she did not know where the end of the universe was. However, as long as she was willing, she could completely collapse this infinite universe, making it completely endless. In terms of strength, she was already invincible. In terms of lifespan, she was already eternal. However, without Yi Xian, all of this was meaningless. The woman in a plain dress suddenly turned her head, and she looked coldly in a certain direction. As long as my brother is alive, the universe is alive. After a moment of silence, she suddenly said, "Damn it, threatening me every day, I really can't take it anymore." P.S. 2 things. First, I'm going back to my hometown. I'm going back to see my family because I've been away for a long time. I have to go back and see my mother. My brother is studying, and my mother is alone in my hometown. It might affect my writing, everyone please understand. The second thing, because of the updated storyline tomorrow, an unexpected character will appear. Therefore, I will post a special article on my WeChat account at 9 o'clock. Everyone can add my WeChat account first. After tomorrow's update, everyone can watch it. Tomorrow's update will be at 3 p.m. I'll keep this character in suspense. Anyway, everyone will definitely not expect it. It's expected, and unexpected, ha. Chapter 2196. Yi Xian and Enrich sat in each other's arms amidst the starry sky. After they'd bared their hearts, they'd naturally become even closer to each other. Yi Xian gazed at the shattered space in the surroundings, and then he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly frowned. The law of conservation. Enrich turned around to gaze at Yi Xian. The law of conservation? Yi Xian nodded. He gazed at the expanse of space in the surroundings that he'd slashed apart with his sword, and then he spoke in a low voice. The pavilion master of Immortal Treasure Pavilion said that it's the law of conservation. Even if a universe is destroyed, its quantity still exists. I didn't really understand it earlier, but now that I look carefully, I noticed that while I've slashed this expanse of space into pieces, the quality of the things within it still exists. As he spoke, he waved his right hand lightly. In an instant, a wave of ripples instantly arose in the pitch-black starry sky here. He'd destroyed a region of space. It wasn't the essence of this expanse of space. What was quantity? It was equivalent to the essence of space. Yi Xian suddenly said, "It's like a piece of wood. Would it really cease to exist if it was incinerated? No, it would turn into ash. Actually, it would still exist, and it would just exist in a different form. Quantity, essence." His brows knit together slightly as he spoke. Meanwhile, Enlancio suddenly said, "I understand now." Yi Xian turned around to gaze at Enlancio with astonishment. "You understand?" Enlancio nodded. "We've been constantly talking about essence in the past. But our strengths and knowledge were lacking at that time, so we weren't able to understand the true meaning of essence." When she spoke up to hear, she paused for a moment and continued, "Essence actually surpasses the universe itself." She stood up slowly as she spoke, and then she suddenly stabbed the spear in her right hand forward. Bang! A pitch-black vortex suddenly appeared at the tip of the spear. Enlancio gazed at the pitch-black vortex and spoke softly, "The essence of this expanse of space still exists. Perhaps it'll be able to recover to its original state after many years." Yi Xian nodded. The pavilion master said that if one cultivates according to the law of conservation, one's life can last forever, and one's martial Tao can never be destroyed. As he spoke, he took out the unfinished book of the owner of Celestial Treasure Pavilion. She used the language of this world to write it. Obviously, she wanted to show it to the people of this world. Unfortunately, she didn't finish it. When he spoke up to this point, he suddenly shook his head and smiled. "Actually, it's not bad." Enlancio nodded. "I've comprehended something." Yi Xian blinked. "Have you realized something?" Enlancio nodded. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Then you can cultivate in the tower." Enlancio nodded and directly entered the small pagoda. On the spot, Yi Xian glanced at his surroundings. Just as he was about to properly study the law of conservation, the ancestor of the Great Desolate Palace appeared before Yi Xian. The previous master hurriedly said, "Young Master Yi, according to what I know, the Spirit Demon Realm's Demon City has been rebuilt again." Hearing this, Yi Xian fell silent. It was rebuilt. The first master took out a teleportation talisman and placed it in front of Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, this talisman can directly teleport to the Demon City." He naturally hoped that Yi Xian would go to the spirit demon race again because that way, Yi Xian could exhaust the spirit demon race's strength. Yi Xian glanced at his previous master. He wanted to kill him. It was rebuilt. It was obvious that another expert from the spirit demon race had awakened. Moreover, there might be more than one of them. The reason why the other party wanted him to go was so that they could gang up on him. Under normal circumstances, he would just pretend that he didn't know. The problem was, this idiot actually came to remind him. Go. Once he went, he would definitely be ganged up on. He might not even be able to return. Not going? Damn it. Back then, he had acted so arrogantly. If he didn't go, he would really lose face. He could lose face, but he couldn't take back his pretense, right? What should he do? At this moment, the previous master suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, when will you set off for the Demon City?" Yi Xian, the previous master, still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said, "Previous master, did the Great Wilderness win or lose the battle with the spirit demon race?" The previous master smiled bitterly. Both sides suffered. Yi Xian blinked. "It can't be. Look, there are spirit demon race experts everywhere, but I didn't find any Great Wilderness Palace experts in the spirit demon race. You guys lost, right? Moreover, you should have lost quite badly, right?" The previous master's expression froze. Yi Xian sneered. How could he not understand this previous master? The other party wanted to use him as a spear and make him fight the spirit demon race. I can kill the spirit demon race, but you can't use me as a spear. Yi Xian continued, "Previous master, what position do you have in the Great Wilderness Palace?" The previous master hesitated for a moment before saying, "Similar to a military advisor." Yi Xian shook his head. Even if you're a military advisor, why are you so narrow-minded? Isn't it better to rope me in? Why must you use me? Do you think I'm stupid, or are you stupid? The previous master's expression was somewhat ugly. Yi Xian looked at the previous master. Are you unconvinced? As he spoke, his thumb gently pressed against the hilt of the green profound sword. If you're not convinced or unhappy, just say it. The previous master looked at Yi Xian with a hint of fear in the depths of his eyes. Say it? Naturally, he didn't dare to say it. He knew that if he dared to say it, the person in front of him would dare to kill him. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Are you going to say it or not? Hearing that, the previous master was shocked and hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, it's my fault. I have some small thoughts. I hope that young Master Yi will be magnanimous and not take it to heart. Yi Xian was expressionless. I'll take it to heart. The previous master's expression froze. At this moment, Xiao Ta's voice suddenly sounded in the previous master's mind. My young master likes the star god Vane. If you think about it, he won't take it to heart. Star god Vane. The previous master hesitated for a moment before taking out a storage ring and handing it to Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, this is a small token of my appreciation. Please accept it. Yi Xian glanced at it and immediately flew into a rage. Who do you think I am? Am I that kind of person? The previous master was stunned, his face filled with disbelief. Young Master Yi isn't greedy? At this moment, Xiao Ta's voice sounded in the previous master's mind again. You've given too little. The previous master, at this time, the cyan profound sword in Yi Xian's sheath suddenly trembled, and a sword cry resounded. The previous master was shocked, and immediately took out another storage ring and handed it to Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, all of my star god veins are here. Yi Xian took a look. There were less than 30,000 star god veins in the storage ring. He frowned. Why are you so poor? The Immortal Treasure Pavilion can easily have more than 1 billion star god veins. The previous master laughed bitterly. Young Master Yi, the Immortal Treasure Pavilion is a business. How can ordinary people compare to a business? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then nodded. That's true. After saying that, he kept the storage ring and turned to leave. The previous master's heart relaxed, and he broke out in a cold sweat. In that instant, his intuition told him that if Yi Xian attacked, he would definitely die. He couldn't block it. As if he had thought of something, the previous master sighed in his heart. It had to be said that his vision was indeed small. Actually, the reason why he did that in the beginning was because he thought that Yi Xian was a brainless second generation. Thus, he wanted to use Yi Xian to let Yi Xian fight the spirit demon race, and then draw out the power behind Yi Xian. In this way, the great wilderness would have an extra super helper. But he didn't expect that Yi Xian would see through his intentions. All of this was good, trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. The previous master shook his head, turned around, and left. Yi Xian went directly to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Seeing Yi Xian, Li Sheng's face instantly turned bitter. Here it comes again. Of course, he was even more shocked. Because he already knew about the spirit demon realm. The person in front of him had actually massacred several cities in the spirit demon realm, and even killed the spirit demon divine master of the spirit demon race. How terrifying! Yi Xian glanced at Li Sheng, then said, President Li, lend me some money, I want to shoot. Li Sheng was stunned. Borrow money? Shoot. Yi Xian nodded. He had quite a few divine star veins, but not many. He only had 70,000 to 80,000 divine star veins now, and he could shoot twice at most. If he faced an extremely strong opponent, then he could only shoot once. Poor. This was the first time he felt so poor. Li Sheng hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Young Master Yi, how much do you want to borrow? Yi Xian asked, How much do you have? Li Sheng's eyelids twitched. This, Yi Xian sighed softly, stood up, and left. Li Sheng was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, "Young Master Yi, you." Yi Xian didn't say anything, and he just flew on his sword and vanished into the horizon. Li Sheng remained silent on the spot. In the distant horizon, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, why aren't you lending anymore?" Yi Xian smiled, "It's not good to force others against their will." Xiao Ta said, "Then what did you do to my late master?" Yi Xian smiled, "It was my late master who schemed against me first. He wanted to treat me like an idiot." Xiao Ta said, "I understand." Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings, and he was just about to enter Xiao Ta to cultivate, and the space before him suddenly trembled slightly. In the next moment, space split open, and a middle-aged man walked out from within. Yi Xian frowned slightly when he saw this middle-aged man. It was the left hall master from before. However, it wasn't his main body, but a clone. Yi Xian frowned when he saw the left hall master. How did this fellow find me? The left hall master stared at Yi Xian. "My city has been built." Yi Xian asked, "And then?" The left hall master stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "Didn't you say that you would slaughter every time my city is built? Come, now that my city has been built, I beg you to slaughter it." Yi Xian fell silent. The left hall master mocked, "What? You're not going to slaughter them?" Yi Xian looked at the left hall master and smiled, "I'll slaughter them if I want to, and I won't slaughter them if I don't want to. Bite me." The left hall master stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "If you don't dare, then just say it." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and he seemed to be slightly afraid. A wisp of mockery appeared on the left hall master's lips when he saw this. Afraid? Yi Xian looked at the left hall master, and he seemed to have been provoked. He immediately said angrily, "Once I go, all of you will definitely gang up on me. If you have the ability, then fight me with your main body. Let's have a fair fight." The left hall master stared at Yi Xian, "The kind that won't run?" Yi Xian said angrily, "Whoever runs is a coward." The left hall master said, "All right." As soon as he finished speaking, the space he was in trembled slightly. In the next moment, his projection gradually solidified. His main body had descended. The left hall master looked at Yi Xian, and just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared on the spot. Quantitative change. Before the left hall master could react, his head was sent flying. Instant kill. The left hall master's eyes were wide open, and they were filled with disbelief. He was instantly killed? How was this possible? In the air, Yi Xian sheathed his sword and glanced at the left hall master's head. "Who gave you the guts to speak to me like this? Don't you know that I'm invincible?" The left hall master was speechless. Chapter 2197. It had to be said that the left hall master died with everlasting regret. When he fought with Yi Xian previously, Yi Xian was suppressed by him. But now, he was instantly killed with a single strike. Instant kill with a single strike. This was too ridiculous. The left hall master's face was full of disbelief. His eyes were wide open, and he died with everlasting regret. Yi Xian sheathed his sword and opened his palm. A storage ring on the left hall master's hand flew to him. He glanced at it. There were 100,000 star god veins in the storage ring. 100,000. He could fire another 2 shots. Yi Xian put away the storage ring and turned to leave. At this moment, the space behind him suddenly trembled slightly. Yi Xian frowned and pressed his left thumb against the hilt of the green profound sword. At this moment, a blurry figure appeared behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Danger. The next moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. Boom! The moment the sword slashed down, heaven and earth tore apart. However, the next moment, Yi Xian was pushed back thousands of feet by a terrifying aura. After stopping, Yi Xian glanced at his right hand. The sword was fine, but his advantage had been completely cracked. His bones were visible. Yi Xian looked up into the distance. The blurry figure gradually solidified. It was a middle-aged man in a black robe with shoulder-length hair. Yi Xian gripped the scabbard tightly with his left hand. This middle-aged man was much stronger than the left hall master. At this moment, a voice suddenly resounded from the distant horizon. Mu Su, what wind blew you, the patriarch of the spirit demon clan, here today? The patriarch of the spirit demon clan. Yi Xian turned to look. A white-robed man stood in the distance. Grand Desolation Temple's master, Tai Huang. Mu Su glanced coldly at Tai Huang before his gaze landed on Yi Xian. My demon city has been built. You're welcome to slaughter. With that, he turned and disappeared on the spot. Yi Xian was silent. Xiao Ta, is he provoking me? Xiao Ta said, yes. Young lord, do you want to kill him? Yi Xian nodded. You go first. Xiao Ta thought for a moment, and then he said, let's make peace. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Tai Huang looked at Yi Xian. May I know where little friend Yi is from? Yi Xian said, Qingcheng. Tai Huang frowned slightly, Qingcheng? Yi Xian smiled and said, it's just a small place. Tai Huang glanced at Yi Xian, and then he smiled and said, young friend, we have a common enemy, right? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Tai Huang looked at Yi Xian, join forces? Yi Xian remained silent. There were many schemes outside, so it was best to be careful. Tai Huang smiled and said, young Master Yi, you might not know much about the spirit demon race. They aren't as simple as they seem on the surface. Yi Xian frowned slightly, what do you mean? Tai Huang said solemnly, there's someone behind the spirit demon race. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he said, there's someone behind them? Tai Huang nodded, if there's no one, would they have dared to attack my great wilderness with all their strength? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, who's behind them? Tai Huang said solemnly, the Lord of Five Elements, the one who controls the Tao of the Five Elements in the world. The Tao of the Five Elements. Yi Xian said solemnly, like the Lord of Time? Tai Huang nodded. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Why did he order the spirit demon race to attack the great wilderness? Tai Huang chuckled lightly, there's a divine object in the great wilderness ancient world that even the supreme existences covet. Yi Xian was curious, what's that? Tai Huang said solemnly, the primeval sacred temple, left behind by the primeval great emperor all those years ago. It's an existence that surpasses the supreme existences. Rumor has it that there's a legendary vein of heaven within it. Yi Xian asked, surpassing the supreme existences means they're even stronger than the Lord of Time and the others? Tai Huang nodded. Yi Xian asked again, what's a vein of heaven? A spirit vein? Tai Huang smiled and said, no, it's a type of inheritance, a mysterious inheritance. Do you know why the Lord of Time and the Lord of Five Elements were able to become supreme existences and rule the universe alone? Yi Xian said solemnly, isn't the Lord of Time able to become the Lord of Time because he's a spirit condensed from time? Tai Huang smiled faintly, little friend, you only know part of it. He's indeed a spirit condensed from time, but you should know that every universe's time has its own spirit. Thousands of universes have thousands of time spirits. He was now the master of time because he had become the strongest. Then, he could control the time spirits of tens of thousands of universes. He was like an emperor in the mortal world. There were countless people, but only the strongest one could become a king. And the reason why the Lord of Time was able to become the king of the Tao of Time was because he once obtained a vein of heaven inheritance. Yi Xian was slightly curious, what's a vein of heaven inheritance? Tai Huang shook his head, I don't know. Only supreme existences like them know. Yi Xian blinked, didn't you say that the ancient temple of antiquity is in the great wilderness? Tai Huang smiled bitterly, it is in the great wilderness and I even know the exact location. But knowing doesn't mean I can enter. Not only do I not dare to enter, I don't even dare to approach that place. Yi Xian asked, dangerous? Tai Huang nodded, it's not an ordinary kind of danger. Yi Xian continued to ask, was the ancient emperor rich? Tai Huang hesitated for a moment before saying, an expert of this level is naturally rich. Otherwise, how could he cultivate to such a level? Yi Xian thought about it and nodded, I understand. Speaking of which, Lord of Five Elements, why didn't the ancient temple of antiquity come and take it himself? If his true body came, your great wilderness wouldn't dare to resist, right? Tai Huang smiled bitterly, if his true body came to take it, would I dare to resist? Not only would I not dare to resist, I would have to line the streets to welcome him. The problem is, he didn't come with his true body. He let the spirit demon race come and promised the spirit demon race that after the matter is done, the great wilderness will belong to the spirit demon race. Yi Xian was a little puzzled, why did he do that? Tai Huang sighed softly, many people like to be a whore and establish a chastity memorial arch at the same time. Yi Xian, Tai Huang continued, ancient emperor left a message that the ancient temple of antiquity belongs to the fated. From what I know, the Lord of Five Elements and the ancient temple of antiquity know each other. They should be the same group of experts. However, this ancient emperor is much stronger. The reason why he didn't come to take it himself is probably because he's afraid of being laughed at. Under normal circumstances, most people care about their reputation, and those shameless people are rare. Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. Damn it. Does this thing know how to talk? Tai Huang continued, moreover, if he came to take it himself, the other supremes probably wouldn't let him take it so easily. Therefore, he chose to let the spirit demon race do this. At this point, he suddenly shook his head, actually, I'm also very annoyed. If he came to me back then, I would also cooperate with him. He can do whatever he wants and I will definitely cooperate unconditionally. After all, how can I not cooperate with such a supremes? I can't wait to suck up to him. I don't know if there's water in his brain. He didn't look for the people close at hand, but instead went to the spirit demon race. Damn it, this kind of person can also become a supremes. Brother Yi, to be honest, I feel very unbalanced. Yi Xian, the more Tai Huang spoke, the angrier he became. Brother Yi, do you know? I've seen too many people since I started cultivating. I've found a problem, and that is, some people only cultivate their realm and don't cultivate their brains. Moreover, some people, the stronger they are, the worse their brains are. Yi Xian nodded in agreement. Yes. Tai Huang sized up Yi Xian and said, Brother Yi, you have such terrifying strength at such a young age. I think your identity isn't ordinary. Yi Xian smiled. Temple Master Tai Huang, I have another question. Back then, when the Lord of Five Elements interfered, how did the great wilderness survive? Tai Huang said solemnly, it's because the pavilion master of the celestial treasure pavilion intervened. Yi Xian frowned. Pavilion master of the celestial treasure pavilion? Tai Huang nodded. She went to talk to the Lord of Five Elements. I don't know what she talked about, but in any case, the Lord of Five Elements didn't attack us. Yi Xian fell silent. Pavilion master of the celestial treasure pavilion. This woman's strength was above the Lord of Five Elements. At this moment, Tai Huang suddenly said, Brother Yi, come to the great wilderness hall. Let's destroy the spirit demon race together. If you come, you'll be the deputy hall master. Of course, if you're not satisfied, you can even be the hall master. I'll support you. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up. This Tai Huang has some skill. In just a few words, he's closed the distance between us. Moreover, his words are very pleasant. He has some skill. Yi Xian smiled. Hall master, how should I address you? Tai Huang smiled. Just call me Tai Huang. Yi Xian nodded slightly and said, can you take me to the primordial sacred hall to have a look? Tai Huang frowned. You want to go to the primordial sacred hall? Yi Xian nodded. I want to go take a look. Tai Huang hesitated for a moment and said, it really is dangerous. Yi Xian smiled. Don't worry. I'll flee if there's any danger. Tai Huang fell silent for a moment before he said, fine. Brother Yi is obviously extraordinary. It shouldn't be a problem to go take a look. However, I still have to remind Brother Yi that this place is extremely dangerous. You must be careful. Yi Xian nodded. All right. Tai Huang didn't say anything else, and he brought Yi Xian along as he vanished into the horizon. Yi Xian hadn't expected that the two of them would actually travel through a stellar region. It took them an entire 4 hours. In an unknown stellar region, Tai Huang pointed towards the depths of the starry sky. The primordial sacred hall is at the end of the horizon. I can't go any further. Yi Xian said solemnly, there are restrictions? Tai Huang nodded. Yi Xian smiled. Understood. As soon as he finished speaking, he transformed into a ray of light and vanished into the distance. Tai Huang frowned as he gazed at Yi Xian. Brother Yi wouldn't be a second generation, right? At the end of the starry sky, Yi Xian's brows suddenly knit together because he sensed an indescribable danger. Meanwhile, Xiao Ta said abruptly, young master, let's go. It's dangerous. Yi Xian didn't hesitate at all when he heard this. He immediately turned around and fled. He wouldn't go head-on against them. However, it was still a little too late. Yi Xian suddenly felt his vision blur. In the next moment, a hand pierced through his abdomen. Yi Xian's pupils constricted. He decisively abandoned his physical body, and his figure trembled as he retreated. In the next moment, he slashed down with his sword. Boom! The ray of light was annihilated as soon as it appeared. In the next moment, a hand arrived above his head, and then it slammed down. The hand was about to forcefully crush Yi Xian's soul. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from the side. Hee hee. Primordial, this is the chosen one. If you kill him, you'll be in big trouble. Chapter 2198. The hand stopped 1.5 m above Yi Xian's head. After a moment of silence, the hand vanished, and the surroundings returned to normal. It was as if it had never appeared. After a short while, Yi Xian noticed that he was on a small island, and there was a black hall at the center of the island. It was majestic and extremely grand. The island was surrounded by water, and at the end of the water was an endless mountain range. Yi Xian turned around and saw a woman standing under a cherry blossom tree in the distance. The woman wore a simple linen short-sleeved shirt. The sleeves were a little short, revealing 2 slender, jade-like hands. On both sides of her shirt, there were 2 small pockets. In the pockets, there were 2 pens that didn't belong to this world. The woman wore loose linen trousers. There were no patterns on the trousers, and they were very simple and clean. On her feet was a pair of linen slippers. They were very simple, and they were very ordinary cloth shoes. The woman's hair was very long, and it reached her waist. However, the front of her forehead was very short, and she had bangs that reached her eyebrows. Beneath the bangs was a pair of light eyebrows that were very simple and natural without any traces of makeup. Beneath the beautiful eyebrows was a pair of extremely clear eyes, and they were like the purest water in autumn. Moreover, there was a small cloth bag hanging from her waist. The woman held a thick ancient book in her hands and placed it before her chest. She was staring at Yi Xian with a faint smile on her face. It was like a spring breeze, and it made one feel very comfortable. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Pavilion Master?" The woman blinked, and then she walked slowly to Yi Xian. She stretched out her right hand and smiled, "Hello, I'm Qin Guan. That's my real name." Yi Xian frowned slightly, "Qin Guan?" The woman smiled faintly like a spring breeze, "Yes, but it sounds like a man's name." Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." The woman smiled, and then she said, "My father gave it to me." At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, she wants to shake hands with you. This is the Milky Way's etiquette. You have to shake hands with her." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before reaching out with his right hand to hold the woman's hand. The woman blinked and did not speak. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "What the heck, young master, I asked you to shake hands with him, not hold his hand. What are you doing?" Yi Xian's face darkened. "Why didn't you make it clear?" Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, "Motherf asterisk Ker, am I not clear enough? You are the one who wants to act like a hooligan." Yi Xian was about to speak when Qin Guan suddenly laughed and asked, "Is this your pagoda?" Yi Xian looked at Qin Guan in astonishment. "You can hear it?" Qin Guan giggled. "I'm not trying to eavesdrop. Its concealment method is too backward. It's useless in front of me." Yi Xian was silent. Big boss. This woman, she's a real big boss. Qin Guan blinked. "Protagonist Yi, can you let me take a look at your pagoda?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, "Miss Qin Guan, why do you call me protagonist Yi?" "My name is Yi Xian." Qin Guan laughed. "Then I'll call you young master Yi." Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, "What does protagonist mean?" Qin Guan blinked. "Simply put, it's equivalent to being the child of destiny. To put it in a more complicated way, it's not something that can be explained in a few words. Because it involves too many things, it's very troublesome to explain. In any case, it's very powerful." Yi Xian was speechless. Qin Guan asked again, "Can I take a look at your pagoda?" Obviously, she was very curious about Yi Xian's Xiao Ta. Yi Xian nodded. "Sure." With that, he handed Xiao Ta to Qin Guan. Actually, he also wanted to see Qin Guan's surprised expression. However, he was a little disappointed. After Qin Guan took Xiao Ta, she sized up Xiao Ta. After a moment, her eyes suddenly lit up and she laughed. "That's amazing. The time inside Xiao Ta and the outside world can be reversed to such an extent. That's amazing." With that, she returned Xiao Ta to Yi Xian. Although there was admiration in her eyes, there was no shock or astonishment. Yi Xian looked at Qin Guan. "Aren't you shocked?" Qin Guan smiled. "I'm all right." Yi Xian was silent for a moment before asking, "Can you do it?" Qin Guan nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian's expression froze. He hesitated for a moment before asking again, "Can you?" Qin Guan nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian was silent. His heart was in turmoil. This woman said she could. F***ck. What the hell? This was Qing Er's personal reversal of time. How many almighty people would be in awe of it? And this woman in front of him said she could do it too? At this moment, Yi Xian was a little confused. This woman wouldn't be like him, who liked to brag, right? Qin Guan suddenly laughed. "Young Master Yi, you've taken all my books. And my little gun, right?" Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and smiled. It's my fault for not being strict. I've already warned Xiao Ta that it won't take things randomly in the future. If it takes things randomly again, I'll break its legs. F***ck. Small Tower immediately jumped up, and began to spit out a fragrance. Yi Xian directly blocked Xiao Ta. "Xiao Ta?" Qin Guan covered her mouth and laughed. It was like 100 flowers blooming, making everything pale in comparison. "Mr. Yi." "Oh no, young Master Yi, it was obviously you who took it. How could you say it was Xiao Ta who took it? It's not good to lie." Yi Xian, Qin Guan stretched out her little hand and smiled. "Young Master Yi, I can give you the books, but the gun. This gun is not suitable to appear in this universe. Can you return it to me?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, Miss Qin Guan, to be honest, it took the initiative to recognize me as its master, F***CK. The little gun suddenly said angrily, let me out. F***CK, how can you do this? Let me out. Xiao Ta suddenly said, don't F***King scream. He has already blocked all of us. This guy is ready to become a human. Little gun, Qin Guan stared at Yi Xian, blinking her eyes. This was the first time she met someone who lied without even blushing. She did not know what to say for a moment. Yi Xian quickly said, I won't take your gun for free. I'll give you a gift too. As he said that, he quickly took out a piece of wood and began to carve. Qin Guan glanced at the wood in Yi Xian's hand, then gently stroked her hair behind her ear and smiled. Carve? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Qin Guan smiled. I also like art very much. Yi Xian quickly said, I like art very much too. Qin Guan looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, do you know what art is? Yi Xian nodded and said casually, art refers to using some means or medium to create an image and then sell it for a lot of money. The more expensive it is, the better the art. After a moment of silence, Qin Guan said, I can't refute that. Yi Xian, after a while, Yi Xian carved a small wooden figure. The small wooden figure was vivid and lifelike, exactly the same as Qin Guan. Yi Xian handed the small wooden figure to Qin Guan. Qin Guan took the small wooden figure and looked at it. She was amazed. Young Master Yi, you didn't use any magical power. You carved it so well. It's purely by hand. If you go to our place, you can be a craftsman. Yi Xian smiled. You like it, don't you? Qin Guan looked at Yi Xian. Is this for me? Yi Xian nodded. Qin Guan shook her head. I don't deserve it. As she said, she returned the small wooden figure to Yi Xian. It's not appropriate to accept a gift from you on our first meeting. Yi Xian quickly said, I'm not giving it to you for free. This small wooden figure is for you, and you're giving me that spear. We're even. We're even. I'm not at a loss. Don't feel guilty. Qin Guan hesitated and said, I'm at a loss. Yi Xian, Qin Guan still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Qin Guan, I remember something. Many people from Immortal Treasure Pavilion don't recognize the Shantian token you gave me. Not only do they not recognize it, but the previous president of Immortal Treasure Pavilion almost killed me. My body was crushed. Sigh. Qin Guan rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, I know what you mean. I can give you that small spear, but you have to promise me one thing. Yi Xian was a little curious. What is it? Qin Guan said seriously, this spear is very powerful. Once it is used, it will cause great harm to the world. You have to promise me that you can't use it easily. If the energy is too great, it will cause great pollution. Some powerful people are not afraid of it, but for those weak creatures, this pollution is destructive. Also, you can't use it on ordinary people or ordinary creatures, okay? Yi Xian nodded. Okay. Qin Guan nodded slightly. As for your small wooden figure, Yi Xian quickly said, I'll give it to you. Qin Guan looked at the small wooden figure and was silent. Yi Xian asked, what's wrong? Qin Guan shook her head slightly. Just now, I felt the cause and effect. If I accept this thing, I'm afraid that something will happen in the future, Yi Xian said with a smile, why bother about the future? It's important to live in the present. It's just a small wooden figure. It represents the pure friendship between you and me. Qin Guan smiled and said, that's true. After saying that, she put away the small wooden figure. Yi Xian glanced at the small cloth bag on Qin Guan's waist and said, Miss Qin Guan, are you from the Milky Way? Qin Guan nodded. Yes. Young Master also knows the Milky Way. Yi Xian smiled and said, I know. My two friends are there. Qin Guan smiled slightly. I know. Is it Little White and Area? Yi Xian was stunned. How do you know? Qin Guan smiled and said, I met them once. But I was just a little girl at that time. Oh, I still remember that they owed me money and didn't pay me back. Hee hee. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Xiao Ta said abruptly, Young master, ask her what her father's name is. Yi Xian said, What do you mean? Xiao Ta said, Ask her. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, Miss Qin Guan, what's your father's name? Qin Guan blinked. Qin Bufan. P.S. If you don't know about Qin Bufan, you can take a look at the previous book, Invincible Sword Domain. If you've read it, you should remember him. As for the Pavilion Master, he appeared in the first article I wrote, Outside the Milky Way. You can take a look. Just search for the official WeChat account, Green Phoenix Peak, and follow me. The only official account, Green Phoenix Peak. That's all. Don't make a mistake. Chapter 2199. Qin Bufan. Xiao Ta suddenly sighed softly when he heard this name, and his sigh carried a trace of a complicated tone. Yi Xian was quite curious. Xiao Ta, what's wrong? Xiao Ta sighed once more. Her father and master are brothers, brothers of life and death. Brothers of life and death. Yi Xian was quite surprised. My father's brothers of life and death? Xiao Ta said, Yes. I never expected that Qin Bufan's daughter would actually come to this world again. Moreover, she's so terrifying. Yi Xian looked at Qin Guan in front of him and said with a smile, You can hear Lil Tower's words, right? Qin Guan nodded. Yi Xian gazed at Qin Guan and said, Do you know that your father and my father know each other? Qin Guan grinned. Dao Yi, your father should be that green-clothed swordsman, right? Yi Xian nodded. Qin Guan smiled. I've investigated him in the past, and he fought alongside my father in the past. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Can you revive your father? Qin Guan shook her head. I can't. She paused for a moment before she continued. No one can revive the dead. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. My father seems to have been revived in the past. Qin Guan smiled. The difference is that it's impossible to revive someone who's truly dead. Even if time is reversed, it's impossible. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, Can you tell me about it in detail? Qin Guan thought for a moment and said, It's very complicated. If I were to explain it in detail, then it would involve numerous theories, and you probably wouldn't be able to understand it. Yi Xian's face instantly darkened when he heard this. It wasn't very harmful, but it was extremely humiliating. At this time, a voice suddenly came from the side, Miss Qin Guan. Yi Xian turned his head and saw a middle-aged man sitting cross-legged at the entrance of the hall not far away. The middle-aged man wore a loose gray robe and his long hair draped over his shoulders. His hands were placed on his knees. The Emperor of the Ancients. Yi Xian took a look at the primeval Grand Emperor with a solemn look in his eyes. He had already exchanged blows with the other party once. Terrifying. This was definitely far beyond the realm of quantitative change. Qin Guan glanced at the primordial and smiled. Primordial, you want to be resurrected too? The desolate antiquity smiled bitterly. Is that even possible? Qin Guan nodded. It's possible for you because you still have a wisp of your divided soul, and your consciousness is still in this world. Of course, the most important reason is that the enemy didn't completely erase you when he killed you. Otherwise, there would be no chance. Hearing this, the ancient desolate immediately stood up and bowed respectfully. Please save me, Miss Qin. Qin Guan was silent. The ancient desolate antiquity bowed again. Yi Xian tugged on Qin Guan's clothes and asked softly, Can you really save him? Qin Guan nodded. I can. But I don't want to. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he said, "Why?" Qin Guan glanced at the ancient desolate antiquity in the distance. "He's not a good person. If I save him today, then he'll bring harm to countless living beings in the future. Even though I didn't kill them, they'll die because of me." At this point, she shook her head slightly. "It's a pleasure to help others, but it depends on the person. Don't save a demon and bring harm to the world." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, "If he's a good person, then you'll save him, right?" Qin Guan nodded. "I will." Yi Xian said solemnly, "If you really save him, then aren't you afraid of angering the big shot who killed him?" Qin Guan smiled mischievously. "I have a gun and money. Who am I afraid of?" As she spoke, she took out a gun. The gun was slightly shorter than Yi Xian's, and it was purplish-black in color. She waved it at Yi Xian and said, "This gun of mine is called All Life is Equal. I don't care if he's a supreme emperor, he'll kneel before me." Yi Xian. At this moment, the ancient desolate antiquity suddenly bowed again and said, "Miss Qin Guan." Qin Guan put away her gun and shook her head. "Ancient desolate antiquity, as far as I know, you once killed countless people to obtain a heaven vein. The karma of your evil thoughts is endless. Do you know that a large part of the reason why you ended up like this today is because of the sins you committed in the past?" The ancient desolate antiquity said in a low voice, "Miss Qin, this world is one where the strong are respected. Every cultivator has their hands stained with blood." As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian. "Take him for example. Aren't his hands stained with blood as well? What kind of evil did he suffer?" Qin Guan shook her head. "You're different from him." The ancient desolate antiquity frowned slightly. "How so?" Qin Guan giggled. "There's someone behind him, but there's no one behind you." The ancient desolate antiquity. Yi Xian. Qin Guan continued. "Ancient desolate antiquity, I'm not criticizing you because you're right. This is how the world is. Every cultivator has their hands stained with blood. However, I personally don't like people who kill, so I refuse to reverse life and death for you." The ancient desolate antiquity was silent. Yi Xian glanced at the ancient desolate antiquity, then tugged on Qin Guan's clothes. Just as he was about to speak, Qin Guan suddenly glared at him. "Don't pull so hard. My clothes are going to fall off." Yi Xian. Qin Guan rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. "What are you trying to say?" Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Miss Qin Guan, you said some people can be reborn. Are you referring to those who still have a divine soul or a will in this world?" Qin Guan nodded. "Those who are completely erased can't be brought back to life. Completely erased means that the person's essence is gone. This is a true death." Hearing this, Yi Xian understood. "Should I leave a clone with Qing? If that's the case, who do I need to be afraid of? Even if I'm killed, I can always start over." At the thought of this, Yi Xian could not help but show a smile at the corners of his mouth. He was very happy. In the distance, the ancient desolate antiquity suddenly sighed and slowly sat down with a sad expression. Qin Guan suddenly said, "Ancient desolate antiquity, I came here today to see that vein of heaven. Can you let me take a look?" The ancient desolate antiquity hesitated for a moment before opening his palm. A palm-sized stone slowly floated in front of Qin Guan. The stone was snow-white, and there was a tiny word on it, Fa. Qin Guan looked at it for a moment, then smiled. "So that's how it is." As she spoke, she opened her palm, and the vein of heaven slowly floated in front of the ancient desolate antiquity. The ancient desolate antiquity looked at Qin Guan. "Miss Qin, do you know where this thing came from?" Qin Guan nodded. "From the forbidden place." The ancient desolate antiquity frowned. "The forbidden place?" Qin Guan smiled and didn't say anything else. She turned to look at Yi Xian. "I'm going to a place to do something. Do you want to come with me?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, "All right." Qin Guan smiled. "Let's go." As she spoke, she was about to take Yi Xian away. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly looked at the ancient desolate antiquity. "Senior, are you going to leave behind an inheritance?" The ancient desolate antiquity looked at Yi Xian. "Yes." Yi Xian said seriously, "What do you think of me, senior?" The ancient desolate antiquity, Qin Guan looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said again, "Senior, after today, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for you to meet a monstrous genius like me again." The ancient desolate antiquity glanced at Yi Xian. "You're not suitable." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Why not? I'll see if I can change it. If I can, I'll change it for you on the spot until you're satisfied." Qin Guan, the ancient desolate antiquity, was completely speechless. Qin Guan moved closer to Yi Xian and whispered, "His inheritance isn't that good." Yi Xian blinked. "Really?" Qin Guan nodded. "I don't lie under normal circumstances." Yi Xian, seeing that the ancient desolate antiquity was still hesitating, Yi Xian smiled and then looked at Qin Guan. "Let's go." Qin Guan nodded. She opened her palm and a sword appeared in her hand. The next moment, the sword suddenly turned into a sword light and flew up, then circled around her and landed steadily at her feet. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was shocked. You're a swordsman?" Qin Guan shook her head. "No." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Then Qin Guan smiled. "I just like flying swords. This sword of mine is used for flying, not for fighting." Yi Xian, just as the two of them were about to leave, the ancient desolate antiquity suddenly said, "Little guy, wait." Yi Xian turned to look at the ancient desolate antiquity. The ancient desolate antiquity suddenly opened his palm and the vein of heaven slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. "My inheritance is in this vein of heaven. From now on, you are the third successor of this vein of heaven." Yi Xian blinked. "The third?" The ancient desolate antiquity smiled. "Yes." Yi Xian asked, "Who's the first?" The ancient desolate antiquity shook his head. "I don't know." Yi Xian didn't ask further. He immediately accepted the vein of heaven and said, "Thank you." The ancient desolate antiquity looked at Yi Xian and said meaningfully, "Take care." With that, his body gradually became illusory. In the end, he chose to disappear. Begged Qin Guan. He didn't do that. In any case, he was a super giant. Although he wanted to live, he would never beg to live. If he was afraid of death, he wouldn't have fought to the end back then. Just like a dragon, even if it died, it would never wag its tail and beg. Soon, the ancient desolate antiquity completely disappeared. After the ancient desolate antiquity disappeared, the secret realm in the middle of the square began to shatter. Yi Xian bowed deeply in the direction of the ancient desolate antiquity. He then turned to look at Qin Guan. "Is he dead?" Qin Guan nodded. "Not at all." Yi Xian fell silent. After cultivating for millions of years, he finally turned to dust. He felt a little sad. Qin Guan suddenly said, "Let's go." Yi Xian nodded. The two of them were about to leave. At this time, after the secret realm disappeared, a powerful aura suddenly appeared in the distant sky. Seeing this, Yi Xian frowned. Obviously, after the ancient desolate antiquity disappeared, this place became less dangerous. Therefore, countless experts rushed to this place. Soon, Yi Xian sensed two familiar auras. One was the aura of Tai Huang. The other was the patriarch of the spirit demon race, Mu Su. They were all here. At this time, Qin Guan said, "Ignore them. Let's go." Yi Xian nodded. With that, he and Qin Guan left on their swords. In the distant sky, Mu Su stared at Yi Xian, who disappeared at the end of the starry sky. His eyes were cold. Vein of heaven. Chapter 2200. Before long, the news of Yi Xian obtaining the vein of the heavens spread throughout the great wilderness and the spirit demon race. The vein of the heavens. That was a godlike existence. Even the Time Lord and the Five Elements Lord coveted such a divine item. And now, Yi Xian obtained it. Who was Yi Xian? In fact, both the great wilderness and the spirit demon realm were familiar with Yi Xian. After all, this was the one who slaughtered the spirit demon realm. After a moment of silence, Mu Su turned and left. Beside him, Tai Huang frowned and said softly, "Pavilion Master." At this moment, an expert from the great wilderness temple suddenly appeared in front of Tai Huang and said solemnly, "Hall Master, the vein of the heavens, should we snatch it?" Tai Huang slapped him with the back of his hand. Boom! The expert from the great wilderness temple was slapped tens of thousands of meters away. Tai Huang coldly glanced at the expert that was sent flying, then pointed at his own head, somewhat disappointed that iron did not meet his expectations. "Don't just cultivate realms, cultivate more IQ, IQ." With that, he turned and left. The expert from the great wilderness temple. In the distant starry sky, Yi Xian and Qin Guan traveled on their swords. Yi Xian glanced at Qin Guan not far away. Qin Guan had his hands behind his back, his long hair fluttering in the wind, exuding an indescribable temperament. Qin Guan suddenly smiled. "Young Master Yi, is the spirit demon race troubling you?" Yi Xian nodded. Qin Guan smiled. "You don't need to be afraid of them. Their race will eventually become history." Yi Xian looked at Qin Guan. "Why?" Qin Guan smiled mischievously. "Because they're troubling you." Yi Xian was silent for a moment. "Why will they become history if they're troubling me?" Qin Guan smiled. "Young Master Yi, there are 4 types of people in this world that are very terrifying. You're one of them." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Can you tell me more about it?" Qin Guan nodded slightly and said, "In our galaxy, people like you are called the Chosen One, that is, the Halo of Light. Under normal circumstances, you will not die, unless," Yi Xian quickly asked, "Unless what?" Qin Guan smiled and said, "Unless the next person with the mandate of heaven appears. If the next person with the mandate of heaven appears, then the previous person will no longer be the only one, and everything in the world will no longer revolve around him. Therefore, he may die." Yi Xian was silent. Qin Guan sized up Yi Xian, and then he said, "You're the only one right now, so you won't die for now. But I have a feeling that you won't be the only one anymore." Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. "Who's next? Can I kill him in advance?" Qin Guan blinked. "I advise you not to do that." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. "Why?" Qin Guan said seriously, "Because the next person with the mandate of heaven is likely to be your son." Yi Xian's expression froze. Qin Guan suddenly said, "Uncle Yang, that is, your father, is the last person with the halo of light." Yi Xian, at this time, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Sister Guan, aren't you afraid of revealing the secret of heaven?" Qin Guan grinned and then took out a gun. "I have a gun. I'm not afraid." Xiao Ta, Yi Xian hesitated and then said, "Miss Qin Guan, what realm are you in?" Qin Guan shook her head. "I don't cultivate." Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. You don't cultivate? Are you a person with no realm?" Qin Guan nodded. "I like research, but I don't like cultivation. So, I don't fight." "Don't fight." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. This woman is so terrifying, but she doesn't know how to fight? Don't know how to fight? Yi Xian said in a low voice, "So, you've been relying on this gun to defend yourself all these years?" Qin Guan shook her head. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. He was about to speak when Qin Guan suddenly said, "I don't rely on this gun. I rely on many guns. I have a lot of guns. I've fed each gun with 100 million star god veins." Yi Xian's expression froze. 100 million star god veins. Yi Xian's mind was in a mess. Is this what a rich woman is like? I only dare to use 50,000 at a time, but she uses 100 million at a time. Are these star god veins cabbages? I'm afraid I'm a fake second generation. At this time, Qin Guan said, in addition to star god veins, there is also a kind of spirit vein called time vein. This kind of time vein is the core spirit vein of a world. This kind of time vein is relatively rare because it takes at least 1,000,000 years to condense into a time vein. Moreover, during this period, it can't be destroyed. Otherwise, it can't be called time vein. It can only be regarded as a pseudo-time vein. At this point, she shook her head slightly. This kind of time vein is too rare. Even I have less than a few million. Yi Xian's expression froze again. A few million, is it really rare? Is it really rare? Yi Xian was about to collapse. Qin Guan suddenly took out a gun from her small cloth bag. This gun was a little long as an adult. She glanced at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "This is my big sniper. I've installed 200 million star god veins. In 1,000,000 universes, as long as I want, I can instantly snipe anyone to death. With one snipe, their head will burst. I named it, Don't Mess With Me. Don't mess with me." Yi Xian, Qin Guan put the "Don't Mess With Me" into the small cloth bag. Then, she took out 2 egg-like things. They were black and had some strange runes and words drawn on them. Yi Xian was a little curious. "This is?" Qin Guan blinked. "You haven't seen it before, right?" Yi Xian nodded. Qin Guan smiled. "This is called a nuclear bomb." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Egg? Egg closed?" Qin Guan shook her head. "The egg you're talking about is not the same as mine." Yi Xian, Qin Guan smiled and said, "I've fed these 2 with 300 million star god veins. The core has endless energy. As long as I detonate it, Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then asked, "How powerful is it?" Qin Guan thought for a moment and then said, "It should be able to destroy 10,000 great ancient wastelands and spirit demon realm." Yi Xian. Qin Guan said again, "I named them, disregard for martial ethics." Yi Xian, Qin Guan suddenly shrugged and then said, "It's too powerful. I don't really want to use it because it will hurt the innocent." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, "How about you let me use it?" Qin Guan hurriedly shook her head. No. Your killing intent is too strong. Moreover, your personality is quite extreme. I can't let you use it." As she said that, she quickly put it away. Yi Xian glanced at Qin Guan's small cloth bag and then said in his heart, "Xiao Ta, if we snatch this cloth bag, what are the chances of success?" Xiao Ta was silent for a moment and then said, "Young master, if you want to snatch it, do it yourself. Please don't drag me into it. I, Xiao Ta, am not that kind of tower." Yi Xian, Qin Guan suddenly looked into the distance and then said, "We'll be there in half an hour." Yi Xian looked at Qin Guan and asked with a smile, "Miss Qin Guan, what is your most powerful divine item?" Qin Guan blinked and said, "Why are you asking this?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "I'm curious." Qin Guan smiled and said, "I have 4 extremely powerful ones. However, I can only tell you one of them. I have to keep the other 3 a secret." Yi Xian was a little curious. "Why keep it a secret?" Qin Guan giggled and said, "Trump card. Of course I have to keep it a secret." Yi Xian, Qin Guan said, "I have a fleet." Yi Xian looked at Qin Guan and asked, "What kind of fleet?" Qin Guan said, "I have hundreds of cosmic god warships. On each of them, there are hundreds of starship god armaments that can travel through time and space at will. Moreover, the scale is still expanding. My current goal is to build 3,000 of them." As she said, she smiled mischievously and said, as long as I call them, they can instantly appear in front of me across millions of galaxies. I will attack wherever I point. Yi Xian was silent for a moment and thought to himself, Xiao Ta, can we afford to offend this woman? Xiao Ta said in a low voice, let's see if you can defend against the sword in her hand, equality of all beings. Yi Xian was silent for a moment and said, let's just be friends with her. Xiao Ta said, great minds think alike. If you can't win, join. No problem. Qin Guan suddenly said, we are here. As she said, she stopped and the sword under her feet flew back to her hand. She was about to put the sword into the small cloth bag when Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Qin Guan, can I see your sword? Qin Guan smiled and said, of course you can. As she said, she handed the sword to Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at it. The sword was 2 fingers wide and 4 feet long, slightly longer than the average sword. The blade was very thin, like a cicada's wing. The blade was average and not particularly sharp. As a whole, there was nothing special about it. Yi Xian looked at Qin Guan and said, Miss Qin Guan, is your sword just an ordinary sword? Qin Guan smiled and said, to a swordsman, it is a very ordinary sword. Yi Xian did not understand. What do you mean? Qin Guan said, my sword is only powerful when it's full of money. Yi Xian. Qin Guan took the sword and pointed at the hilt. This is the entrance to charge money. As long as you feed it with Star God Pulse, it will become very, very powerful. As long as you have money, even an ordinary person can kill a quantitative change realm powerhouse with it. Of course, without money, it has no power. As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, the strength of this sword does not depend on your attainment in swordsmanship, but whether you have money or not. Yi Xian, Qin Guan continued, my sword is not as powerful as yours. Yi Xian asked, why? Qin Guan smiled and said, your sword involves more knowledge, and some of its functions, such as helping you improve your realm, are not normal. Of course, I can understand that. After all, this world is not normal most of the time. Yi Xian, Qin Guan sheathed the sword and said, let's go. They must have been waiting for me for a long time. Yi Xian looked into the distance and saw a huge stone door not far away. Yi Xian followed Qin Guan and asked, Miss Qin Guan, where are we going? Qin Guan smiled and said, the Great Thousand Domains, a place where countless planes intersect. Do you remember I told you that there are 4 kinds of people who are very scary? There are 2 other kinds there. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta suddenly sighed, this girl is not a cultivator, she is a cultivator of money, the Tao of money. P.S. For those who haven't seen yesterday's news, you can search for my official WeChat account, on Green Phoenix Peak and click follow to find the news. Later on, I will also update some news. The main story of the Milky Way will be updated in the form of news, so everyone can follow it. Moreover, the news is also free, you can get it for free, why not? Moreover, every day there will be pictures of some of my cousins and so on. Finally, I will let everyone guess a question. What do you think this Qin Guan's bloodline is? Let me see how many people have the same idea as me. Chapter 2201. Boundless Domain. Yi Xian had to admit he was shocked and he had followed Qin Guan into the vast Kiliacosm territories. In the starry sky, Yi Xian saw countless cities floating in the air. These cities were majestic and extremely luxurious. At a glance, the entire starry sky was filled with them, and there was no end to them. It was a magnificent sight. Not only that, there were many people in the starry sky, and their auras were extremely strong. Clearly, they were not ordinary cultivators. Lively. This was Yi Xian's first impression. The boundless domain was too prosperous. Suddenly, Qin Guan smiled. Let's go to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Miss Qin Guan, is there a Celestial Treasure Pavilion here? Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. Qin Guan turned to Yi Xian and smiled sweetly. Of course, as long as the world is slightly bigger, there will be a celestial treasure pavilion. How many celestial treasure pavilions do you have? Yi Xian asked curiously. Qin Guan tilted her head and thought for a while. After a while, she shook her head. I'm not sure about the exact number, but there should be tens of millions of them, or even more. Yi Xian was speechless. On the way, Yi Xian asked again, is the Celestial Treasure Pavilion the headquarters? No. Qin Guan shook her head. Where is your headquarters then? Yi Xian was curious. Just when Qin Guan was about to speak, a young man suddenly appeared in front of Qin Guan. Behind the young man were two old men in black robes. Their auras were as strong as the starry sky. Just by standing there, they gave off an invisible pressure. The young man smiled. Pavilion Master Qin. Oh, it's Sir Qianji. What's the matter? Qin Guan smiled. The smile on Qianji's face was gentle. Nothing. I just heard that Pavilion Master Qin is back. So, I'm here to meet you. As he spoke, he took a look at Yi Xian and smiled. This is young Master Yi Xian, my friend. Pavilion Master Qin smiled. Friends. Hearing this, Qianji's eyes flashed with astonishment. However, he quickly returned to normal and looked at Yi Xian with a smile. Young Master Yi, nice to meet you. Yi Xian smiled. Nice to meet you. Qin Guan smiled and said, Young Master Qianji, I still have some matters to attend to. Farewell. After that, she left with Yi Xian. Qianji was deep in thought as he watched Qin Guan and Yi Xian disappear into the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, an old man behind him suddenly said, Do we need to investigate this youth? After a moment of silence, Qianji shook his head. The person that Pavilion Leader Qin befriended is definitely not an ordinary person. If we investigate him recklessly, we might offend him. Moreover, doing so would offend Pavilion Leader Qin. The old man nodded slightly and did not say anything else. Qianji looked into the distance. After some time, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. Everyone thinks that I, Qianji, can have anything I want, but, sigh, the two old men fell silent. They knew their young master's intention. If it was any other woman, their young master could have her with a wave of his hand. However, Pavilion Leader Qin was different. She was kind to everyone. This was polite, but it was also a form of alienation. On the road far away, Yi Xian was curious. Miss Qin Guan, did you go there to look for me? Qin Guan shook her head. Not really. I went there to take a look at the vein of the sky. Since you were there, I guess it's fate. Yi Xian smiled. It's fate indeed. Not long later, Qin Guan brought Yi Xian to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. There were 12 floors in the pavilion and it was spacious. As soon as Qin Guan arrived at the entrance, an old man came out to welcome them. The old man walked to Qin Guan and knelt down. Pavilion Leader. Qin Guan rolled her eyes at the old man. Oldly, didn't I tell you that I don't like to kneel? I don't like kneeling at every turn. Next time you see me, don't kneel. Oldly smiled awkwardly. I forgot. Qin Guan shook her head helplessly. You always say that you forgot. Are all the presidents and managers here? Old Li quickly said, 1,360 presidents and 350 managers are here. Qin Guan nodded. Let them wait a little longer. With that, she walked into the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Yi Xian followed her. Glancing at Yi Xian, Mr. Li felt a little curious. Without thinking too much, he hurriedly followed after them. Qin Guan came to the 12th floor. Seeing Yi Xian following, Old Li hesitated but didn't say anything. But to his surprise, Yi Xian followed Qin Guan into the 12th floor. Qin Guan didn't let Yi Xian stay outside. Old Li was in disbelief. For so many years, no one had been able to enter the 12th floor. Who was this young man? Old Li was curious. On the 12th floor, after Yi Xian came in, he looked around. The room was filled with bookshelves. There were many books on the bookshelves. He casually glanced at them and realized they weren't from this world. Qin Guan sat in front of the desk and looked at Yi Xian. She smiled. Can you lend me your sword again? Yi Xian nodded. Of course. With that, he moved his mind and the green profound sword flew to the desk in front of Qin Guan. Qin Guan carefully sized up the green profound sword before picking up the pen and writing. Yi Xian walked closer and couldn't understand it. Words that didn't belong to this world. Yi Xian couldn't help but ask, Miss Qin Guan, what are you writing? Qin Guan smiled. I am writing a record of rare treasures. I will write down all the divine items that I see. Yi Xian was quite curious. How many have you recorded? Qin Guan shook her head. Not many. Only 37 of them have been recorded so far. Yi Xian asked, are they ranked? Qin Guan nodded and smiled. Yes. This sword of yours is ranked at the 3rd position. The 3rd. Yi Xian was quite disgruntled when he heard this, and he waved his hand. Why is it only the 3rd position? I refuse to accept it. Soul suddenly said, I refuse to accept it. Qin Guan blinked and smiled. Do you know what the 1st and 2nd position are? Yi Xian shook his head. We refuse to accept anything. We don't approve of your ranking. Qin Guan smiled delicately. Do you really not want to know what's ranked at the 1st and 2nd position? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, I don't believe there's anything more formidable than the green profound sword. Qin Guan sized up the green profound sword and said, this sword is peerless indeed. However, there's still a gap when compared to the 1st and 2nd positions. Yi Xian couldn't help but ask, what's the 1st position? Qin Guan flipped to a page and said, let's talk about the 2nd position first. The 2nd position is called Dedeabi, and it's the sharpest divine item in the universe. A single stroke of its brush can determine the fate of all things in the universe. The tip of this brush is the sharpest known to the world, and it's even sharper than your sword. Its tip can easily tear apart a few tens of thousands of universes, and it's matchless. Besides that, this brush surpasses all Daos and techniques, and it will never fall into the cycle of reincarnation unless time strikes it. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he asked, it's that formidable? Qin Guan nodded. It's extremely, extremely formidable. Your current sword is unable to go against it. However, I can feel that the person who made this sword deliberately forged it to this extent in order to make it suitable for you to use. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, and then he said, is this Dedeabi in your hands? Qin Guan smiled. Not in my hands, but I know where it is. Yi Xian was curious. Where? Qin Guan said, my hometown. Yi Xian was stunned. The Milky Way? Qin Guan nodded. Yes. Yi Xian was silent. Damn. Are there so many big shots in the Milky Way? Yi Xian collected his thoughts and asked again, what about the 1st position? Qin Guan blinked and said playfully, that's a secret for now. Yi Xian was speechless. Miss Qin Guan, it's not good to keep me in suspense. Qin Guan smiled and said, you'll know in the future. However, I can tell you that the 1st position is also in my hometown, the Milky Way. As she spoke, she began to record the Qingxian sword. At the side, Yi Xian was speechless. Keeping me in suspense, how wicked. He had to admit that he was getting more and more curious about the Milky Way. Thinking of this, Yi Xian could not help but ask, Miss Qin Guan, is this the Milky Way's martial arts civilization? Is it very advanced? Qin Guan stopped and shook her head. The martial arts civilization in the Milky Way is not advanced. On the contrary, the martial arts civilization in our place is very low level compared to this vast universe. However, there is a super big shot in that place. Therefore, the Milky Way has become a little special. Yi Xian was curious. What kind of super big shot? Qin Guan thought about it and said, I can't say. Yi Xian's face darkened. She's keeping me in suspense again. After a while, Qin Guan closed the ancient book in front of her and said with a smile, done. Let's go to the meeting. As soon as she finished speaking, she put down her brush and walked out. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, should I go as well? Qin Guan smiled. Of course. You're a super VIP of my Celestial Treasure Pavilion. In theory, you're a member of my Celestial Treasure Pavilion as well. Yi Xian was speechless. After a while, Qin Guan led Yi Xian to a starry sky. This was a sealed starry sky, and there were over 1,700 people gathered here when he and Qin Guan arrived. Yi Xian noticed that most of the experts here had actually attained the quantitative change realm. Moreover, over 30 of them were unfathomable. This had obviously surpassed the quantitative change realm. What a grand scene! Yi Xian sighed softly. The Celestial Treasure Pavilion was even more terrifying than he'd imagined. The people here hurriedly bowed respectfully when they saw Qin Guan. Greetings, Pavilion Master. Qin Guan smiled. There's no need to be so polite. Everyone, sit. As soon as he finished speaking, an enormous long table appeared here, and all of them hurriedly sat around it. Qin Guan sat at the seat of the host, and then she seemed to have thought of something. She suddenly gazed at Yi Xian, who was still looking for a seat. Young Master Yi, sit by my side. The expression of an old man by Qin Guan's side froze when he heard this. But he hurriedly stood up in the next moment, and then he grinned at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, please sit by my side. All of them gazed at Yi Xian with curiosity in their eyes. Yi Xian cupped his fists to the old man, and then he sat by Qin Guan's side. Qin Guan glanced at the old man and smiled. Brother Zhang, you don't mind, right? Brother Zhang hurriedly said, not at all, Pavilion Master. How could I mind such a trivial matter? Qin Guan smiled tenderly. I knew you wouldn't mind. That's why I asked him to sit at your seat. It's just a seat, and there's no other meaning. Don't think too much about it. Brother Zhang heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this, and she hurriedly said, no. I won't. Qin Guan nodded. Let's find a seat. We have something important to discuss. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man at the side hurriedly stood up and said, Elder Zhang, please sit. Elder Zhang's status in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion was so high that it was only inferior to a few extraordinary elders that were hidden in the shadows. Elder Zhang glanced at the middle-aged man, nodded slightly, and then sat on the middle-aged man's seat. The middle-aged man was just about to look for a seat when a man beneath him hurriedly stood up. Elder Jun, please sit at my seat. Yi Xian was speechless when he witnessed this scene. Qin Guan had a slight headache as well. She pressed lightly on her head and shook her head. I know that there are ways of the world wherever there are people, but all of you have to act according to the situation. If you continue giving way like this, then you'll have to give way for another hour, right? Everyone was speechless. Qin Guan took out a notebook from her small pouch, and then she said, I gathered all of you here mainly for two things. Firstly, young Master Yi possessed my Azure token, but my subordinates disobeyed the rules I set. Not only did they refuse to help young Master Yi, they even plotted against him. Regarding this matter, all of you, meanwhile, Brother Zhang suddenly spoke coldly, kill. These people disrespected the Pavilion Master and deserved to be killed. Yes. Kill. Disrespected the Pavilion Master. Slaughter 3 of their clans. No. Disrespecting the Pavilion Master is a grave crime. How could it be enough to slaughter 3 of their clans? Slaughter 9 of their clans. I'll listen to the pavilion master. Whatever the pavilion master says, the pavilion master is wise and valiant. He is skilled in both literature and martial arts. He will live for thousands of years and unify the universe. Long live the pavilion master. Long live the pavilion master. The pavilion master is awesome. Yi Xian was dumbfounded by this scene. Chapter 2202. Yi Xian was speechless when he witnessed this scene. He'd seen flatterers, but he'd never seen flatterers in such a way. These fellows are too shameless. Moreover, all of them are extraordinary experts. Qin Guan, who stood by Yi Xian's side, slapped her forehead lightly with her right hand. My head hurts. Yi Xian was speechless. The others were still flattering Yi Xian without end, and they seemed to have no intention of stopping. Meanwhile, Qin Guan suddenly slapped the table with her right hand. Bang! In an instant, everyone stopped what they were doing. Qin Guan glared at them and said, "From this moment onward, all of you better be serious." Everyone hurriedly nodded. Qin Guan spoke indifferently. Has Yu Xian, who plotted against young Master Yi, been sentenced? Brother Zhang hurriedly said, "He's been killed." Qin Guan gazed at Brother Zhang. Brother Zhang smiled embarrassedly. He's been sentenced. Disobeying the pavilion master's orders is the #1 crime of my celestial treasure pavilion, and he deserves death. He deserves death. Qin Guan remained silent for a moment before she nodded slightly, and then she turned around to look at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, my celestial treasure pavilion is in the wrong. We gave you the black sky token, yet we didn't allow you to enjoy the rights you deserve. I represent the Celestial Treasure Pavilion to express our sincerest apologies for this, and I hope you can forgive us. Yi Xian fell silent. Qin Guan said, "There will be compensation." Yi Xian immediately said, Of course. It's just a small matter, and it's not worth mentioning. I'm not the type of person to fuss about it." Everyone was speechless. Qin Guan rolled her eyes at Yi Xian, and then she flipped to the next page. She said, "Next up is a very important matter. I hope everyone will listen carefully. A very chaotic era is coming. A very chaotic era." Everyone frowned slightly when they heard this, and they didn't understand what she meant. Yi Xian was a little curious. "Miss Qin Guan, what chaotic era?" Qin Guan sighed softly. "I only found out not long ago that the forbidden land of the ruins of God has been destroyed. Forbidden area of the ruins of God." The others in the surroundings frowned slightly when they heard this because they'd never heard of it. Yi Xian had never heard of it either. Qin Guan said, "The universe is very big, so big that it has no end. Therefore, everyone only knows that they are in the universe, but they don't know where they are in the universe. Now, I will explain the background of this world in detail so that everyone can have a clear understanding of this universe." As she spoke, she flipped to the next page and continued, "With the vast thousand domains as the center, I headed north of this world. After crossing trillions of light years, I still haven't reached the end of the universe. However, I saw an ancient ruin. According to my investigation, this ruin was at least trillions of years ago. Billions of years ago." All the spectators were dumbstruck when they heard this. Yi Xian was also shocked. An ancient civilization that existed trillions of years ago. Qin Guan continued, "Being in such a complicated universe, we have no idea what stage we are in the history of this universe. Any living being in this universe seems extremely tiny." When she spoke up to hear, she shook her head slightly. "Countless ancestors of my hometown once studied this starry sky universe. We once worked hard to allow our people to enter the starry sky universe and explore this unknown universe. However, the further we went, the more we realized how tiny we were. Because our blue planet isn't even a speck of dust in the universe, no, in the Milky Way galaxy." Everyone fell silent. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "What's outside the ancient ruin?" Qin Guan smiled and said, "It's still the boundless universe." Yi Xian fell silent. Qin Guan continued, "Many cultivators often say that the martial Tao has no end. Actually, I think it's the universe that has no end. Since the universe has no end, it means that everything is unknown, and the unknown means that everything is possible. So, the Tao has no end." As she spoke, she flipped to another page and said, "I've organized the universe that I know of, and I've named the universe that I know of, universe visualization." All of them had strange expressions on their faces when they heard this. Qin Guan blinked. "I spent a huge amount of time exploring and searching. So, it's not too much to name it after me, right?" All of them hurriedly shook their heads. "It's not too much." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Miss Qin Guan, I think you can add a word to it." Qin Guan was quite curious. "What word?" Yi Xian said seriously, "Universe visualization." Qin Guan's eyes blinked. "This," Yi Xian said seriously, "universe visualization sounds better." Everyone's expressions grew even more strange. "This kid is so shameless." Qin Guan was slightly hesitant. "This," Yi Xian sighed softly, "if Miss Qin Guan feels that it's difficult, then forget it." Qin Guan immediately said, "All right." Yi Xian's expression froze. "I'm not done." Qin Guan glanced at Yi Xian. "You didn't do anything. Traversing stellar regions is very tiring." Yi Xian sighed softly, "All right. If you feel that it's difficult, then forget it. In any case, this universe has nothing to do with me, Yi Xian. Guarding the universe is very tiring indeed, and it's strenuous and unrewarding." Qin Guan suddenly said, "Let's call it universe visualization." Everyone was speechless. Yi Xian frowned slightly. "You don't feel that it's difficult?" Qin Guan giggled, "It's just a name." Yi Xian fell silent. He suddenly felt that he hadn't gained anything. Something was wrong. Qin Guan continued, "The universe visualization is divided into 3 regions. The most powerful force in the northern region is the Forbidden Land. The Forbidden Land's martial arts civilization is advanced, and it has the highest known realm of the universe, the visualization realm." Everyone's expressions froze. Could it be that the Pavilion Master named it herself? Qin Guan smiled, "I named it, and the Pavilion Master has already agreed. This realm was modified by me, and the Pavilion Master's strength has risen to the next level under my guidance. Therefore, the highest realm of the universe visualization is the visualization realm. As for the other realms, I will tell you about them in detail later, because I have already sorted out the current realms." As she spoke, she shook her head slightly. "Not only are there many realms in the universe visualization, but they are also very messy. Therefore, I have already sorted them out. The unnecessary realms will be deleted, and the useful ones will be kept. Some useful realms will also be combined with other realms to form a new realm. When the time comes, I will announce it to the entire universe visualization. Apart from that, I also wrote a book called Book of Observation. This book records the cultivation methods of each realm in detail, as well as their unique features, so that cultivators can better understand each realm." Below, Old Zhang hurriedly asked, "Pavilion Master, are you selling this book?" Hearing this, all the presidents instantly became excited. If they were to sell it, wouldn't the Celestial Treasure Pavilion make a killing? However, Qin Guan shook his head. "I'm not selling." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Qin Guan said seriously, "This kind of thing benefits the entire Guanxian cosmos. It can't be measured with money." As she spoke, she glanced at the guild masters present, and then he said, "Remember, those who are rich enough to rival a country, if they don't have benevolence and do whatever they want, exploiting the people, then they are rich but heartless. Those who are rich but heartless, no matter how much wealth they have, are just slaves to money." At this point, her tone became more serious. "I don't care about outsiders, but since you respect me, then you must do as I say. Money is important, but virtue is more important. A gentleman loves money, but he must obtain it in the right way. Yi Xian glanced at Qin Guan and nodded slightly. This woman's values are as righteous as mine. The Celestial Treasure Pavilion branch presidents nodded, expressing their agreement with Qin Guan's words. Qin Guan continued, has President Meng Meng of the Forbidden Land arrived? At this moment, an old man hurriedly said, Pavilion Master, not yet. The Forbidden Land is too far from the boundless thousand domains, and President Meng Meng is still on her way. After a moment of silence, Qin Guan said, I have already planned to build a teleportation array between the 3 domains and the boundless thousand domains. There are no problems in terms of funds or technology, but, at this point, she looked at Yi Xian, young Master Yi, I was worried about this before, but after seeing the sword in your hand, I made a new discovery. As far as I know, your sword can freely travel through space, right? Yi Xian nodded, that's right. Qin Guan praised, the person who made this sword has unfathomable attainments in space and time. She reminded me that space and time can be homogenized. I have to say, it's really awesome. As she spoke, her small face blushed, when I'm excited, my words are too vulgar. Hee hee. Yi Xian was speechless. Qin Guan continued, I have already understood the mystery of your sword ignoring space and time, so there is no problem in terms of technology. However, because this homogenization of space and time was not my idea, I am embarrassed to directly use it in my teleportation array. Young Master Yi, how about this? You lend me this technology, and I will give you 30% of the profits of the teleportation array every year. 30%. Yi Xian blinked, how much? Qin Guan thought for a moment, then said, there should be a minimum of 1 billion star god veins every year. Yi Xian was stunned at first, but the next moment, he quickly said, deal. Qin Guan blinked, do you want to ask the person who made this sword first? Yi Xian quickly shook his head, no, I agree. Qin will not have any other opinions. Moreover, her invention is equivalent to my invention. Qin Guan nodded slightly, then turned to look at a young woman not far away, go and draw up a contract. The woman quickly got up and retreated. Yi Xian frowned slightly, do we still need to sign a contract? Qin Guan smiled, of course. Yi Xian's face darkened, you don't believe me? Of course I don't. Qin Guan was straightforward and almost said what she thought, but she reacted quickly and quickly changed her words. Of course I believe young Master Yi, this contract is just a formality, a formality. Yi Xian, at this time, Xiao Ta suddenly said, young master, really, not to mention this pavilion Master Qin, even I don't believe you. Sometimes when you are shameless, can you still be called a human? Let's not talk about other things, just look at how many inheritances you have tricked along the way. You walk into a secret realm ruin and ask people if they have an inheritance? How can you be so thick-skinned? Yi Xian's face darkened, Xiao Ta, you are really bold, how dare you scold Qin, F***ck, Xiao Ta jumped up, you. Chapter 2203. Xiao Ta didn't dare to speak anymore. If he continued, he was afraid that he would be played to death. He, this young lord, was no longer a human. Qin Guan continued, the northern region is the strongest, and it's the Forbidden Land. As for the strength of the Forbidden Land, I won't say much. Because it wouldn't take long for everyone to find out. Let me tell everyone about the southern region. There are 4 strongest forces in the southern region. The first is the Time Court, whose master is the Master of Time and controls the Tao of Time. The second is the 5 Elements Palace, whose masters are the 5 lords who control the Tao of 5 elements. Actually, as far as I know, he controls more than just the Tao of 5 elements. As she spoke, she flipped to the next page of the notebook and continued, the other 2 are the Law Master and Tao Master. They control at least 70% of the Tao laws and laws of the dark observing cosmos. They are both very powerful, second only to the one in the Forbidden Land. Yi Xian was curious. Who is the strongest among the four? Qin Guan smiled. It should be the Tao Master who controls 70% of the Tao laws of the world. Yi Xian nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. Qin Guan said, the other two super forces are the primordial sect founded by the primordial immortal lord of the western region, and the master of the vast 1,000 domains, 1,000 Chant City. At this point, she smiled and continued, these forces are the strongest forces in the dark observing cosmos. These forces are very far away from each other, so there are no conflicts for the time being. In addition, there are some hidden aristocratic families. However, they have been in seclusion for at least tens of thousands of years, so I won't reveal them and cause trouble for them. Yi Xian suddenly asked, what about the eastern region? Qin Guan's expression suddenly became somewhat solemn. There used to be a super force in the eastern region called the Land of Divine Ruins, but now it has been destroyed. Yi Xian frowned. Destroyed? Qin Guan nodded. At the end of the eastern region, that race is coming. Yi Xian said solemnly, what race? Qin Guan said softly, the Tao race, from the burial ground. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The Tao race? Qin Guan nodded. They use Tao as their surname and control thousands of Taos. They claim to be a race that is infinitely close to God. At this point, she glanced at Yi Xian. In this race, there is someone with the same special identity as you. That person's identity is no weaker than yours. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, Big sister, this isn't right, right? Young Lord is a person of destiny, so there shouldn't be anyone with a more special identity than him. Qin Guan smiled and said, under normal circumstances, it's indeed impossible. But, who said that the mandate of heaven can't die? Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, if the person of destiny dies, then what's the point of playing with the hammer? Qin Guan shook his head and smiled, Xiao Ta, you are still too young to understand. There were two situations in which a person with the mandate of heaven would die. The first was when the next person with the mandate of heaven appeared, because after the next person with the mandate of heaven appeared, he would no longer be the only one. During this period of time, if he didn't have invincible strength, he would most likely die. The reason why Uncle Yang is fine is because when young Master Yi appeared, he was already invincible in the world. Almost no one can kill him. At this point, she glanced at Yi Xian. If you haven't reached Uncle Yang's strength before the next person of destiny appears, then you may die. Hearing this, Yi Xian was silent. At this moment, he suddenly understood what Qing and his father were worried about. Qin Guan continued, there's another situation where the person with the mandate of heaven will die. That is, he is no longer the only person with the mandate of heaven. It is possible for two people with the mandate of heaven to appear in a world. At this point, she paused and said, of course, under normal circumstances, it's not very possible. But, it doesn't mean it's impossible. That depends on the pen. Yi Xian frowned slightly, what pen? Qin Guan smiled, Dadeabi. The real terrifying thing about it isn't its strength, but its ability to write the fate of all living things. Therefore, it is also called the Pen of Destiny. It is very powerful. If it were to act up one day, you would be in deep trouble. He. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then said, why are you laughing? It seems like you are taking pleasure in my misfortune. Qin Guan blinked, really? Yi Xian nodded seriously. Qin Guan grinned, don't bother about such a small problem. Yi Xian was speechless. Qin Guan continued, do you remember that I said there are 4 types of people that can threaten you? Yi Xian nodded, tell me more about it. Qin Guan said, the first type is someone who is also a person of destiny. It's like a king of a world going to another world. Isn't it very easy for the king of the other world to kill him? Yi Xian nodded, what about the other 3 types? Qin Guan said, top big shots. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, what kind of top big shots? Qin Guan smiled, your father. Yi Xian was speechless. Qin Guan grinned. If they reach Uncle Yang's level, Uncle Yang will not be able to stop them if they want to kill you. Once such a strong person targets someone weaker than him, the other party will have no chance of survival. Yi Xian nodded slightly. What about the other two types? Qin Guan whispered, people outside the rules. Yi Xian frowned slightly, people outside the rules? What do you mean? Qin Guan thought for a while, then said, in our place, it's called loopholes. Nothing is perfect. There are loopholes, and some loopholes are outside the rules. You might not understand it if I tell you this. I know someone outside the rules. You should know him too. Yi Xian asked hurriedly, who? Qin Guan smiled, a swordsman in a cloud-white robe. He is a person outside the rules. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression froze. Big brother. Big brother is outside the rules? Yi Xian asked in his heart, Xiao Ta, do you think she's right? Xiao Ta was silent for a while, then said, anyway, Big brother Xiao Yao is really unreasonably strong in my life. He seeks to fight all his life because he can't be defeated, so he always seeks to be defeated. Yi Xian was silent. Outside the rules. Qin Guan continued, this kind of person is unreasonably strong. Yi Xian looked at Qin Guan, besides Big Brother Xiao Yao, is there anyone else outside the rules? Qin Guan nodded, there is. And, I know who it is. Yi Xian frowned slightly, who? That Dao clan? Qin Guan shook his head, that's not it. The one from Dao clan is not outside the rules. The one from Dao clan is a heaven-defying being. Yi Xian looked at Qin Guan, a heaven-defying being? Qin Guan nodded, this kind of person is called a variable. This kind of person is a heaven-defying being the moment they appear. Under normal circumstances, from the birth of a universe to its destruction, this kind of person may not appear. Variable. Yi Xian glanced at Qin Guan, then said, what kind of existence is Qing? Qin Guan said in a low voice, the Qing you are talking about, is it Tianming? Yi Xian smiled, you know her? Qin Guan's lips curled up, of course, besides writing the Exotic World Treasure record, I also wrote the Exotic World Big Boss list. Tianming is so powerful, so she must be recorded in it. However, because I have never come into contact with her, I am not particularly clear on how strong she is. Yi Xian smiled, make an estimate. Qin Guan was silent for a moment, then said, I won't say. Yi Xian's expression froze, why? Qin Guan blinked, I just won't say. Yi Xian was speechless. Qin Guan smiled, don't be depressed. I naturally have my reasons for not saying. Don't be angry, okay? Yi Xian shook his head, smiling, I'm not angry, I'm just a little curious. Qin Guan smiled and said, after I finish writing this alien world's big shots ranking list, I can show it to you first, because I have made a ranking in it. At that time, you will know who is number one. Yi Xian smiled, that's a deal. Qin Guan nodded, deal. At this time, Xiao Ta suddenly said, sis, what kind of existence are you? I think you are also very powerful. Qin Guan shook her head, smiling, I am not powerful, I am just an ordinary descendant of the Yellow Emperor. I like to explore the universe, like to study the universe, like to play around, I can't compare to these big bosses. Moreover, I don't like fighting and killing. I don't particularly like the law of the jungle in this world, but there is nothing I can do about it, because this world is like this. It is easy to change the world, but people's hearts are hard to change. Yi Xian was silent. He had to admit that this woman in front of him was indeed a little special. She was very thoughtful. Qin Guan smiled, and then he glanced at everyone present. I have gathered everyone here mainly for the second matter, because according to what I know, the Dao race has entered the Dark Temple cosmos with ill intentions, and it won't be long before a great calamity may befall this Dark Temple cosmos, so everyone must be mentally prepared. Yi Xian said in a low voice, what does the Tao race intend to do? Qin Guan said softly, dominate, of course, and take revenge. Yi Xian frowned slightly, dominate the Dark Temple cosmos? Qin Guan smiled, that's not all, according to what I know, they have a higher goal, and dominating the Dark Temple cosmos is merely their first step. Yi Xian looked at Qin Guan, will you stop them? Qin Guan fell silent. Yi Xian said in a low voice, you won't stop them? After a moment of silence, Qin Guan said, in the past, there were billions of people in the Tao race, and there were about 30 million peak powerhouses. But now, there are less than 30 million people in the Tao race, and there are less than 1 million peak powerhouses. Do you know why this is? Yi Xian shook his head. Qin Guan said softly, I have investigated the past. Back then, the top forces of the Dark Temple cosmos joined forces to slaughter the Tao race and snatched their supreme divine item, the Tao scripture. The heavenly vein is a divine item in the Tao scripture. As she said that, she looked at Yi Xian and sighed. Back then, in order to snatch that divine item, they slaughtered billions of people. Back then, the Tao race patriarch and a few of their supreme powerhouses used their lives to escort the few survivors of the Tao race into the burial ground, and before they died, countless youths of the Tao race swore with their blood that as long as the Tao race is not wiped out, they will definitely take revenge. If this generation can't take revenge, then the next generation will. If the next generation can't take revenge, then the next generation will. As she said that, she sighed again, everything has its cause and effect. The current calamity of the Dark Temple cosmos is because of the sins they committed back then. Yi Xian said in a low voice, the celestial treasure pavilion is so rich. What if they want to rob your celestial treasure pavilion? What will you do? Qin Guan was expressionless, and she directly took out a large pile of don't talk about martial ethics. When Eggy appears, your parents raised him for nothing. Yi Xian. Chapter 2204. Looking at the two balls, Yi Xian was speechless. Is this the power of money? Qin Guan continued with the meeting. Yi Xian sat aside and listened quietly. He had to admit that he was quite shocked. Because these chairmen from all over the world were reporting the annual income of the celestial treasure pavilions they were in, and Yi Xian discovered that the celestial treasure pavilion with the lowest income had at least 1 billion star divine veins every year. What did that mean? After all, there were more than 1,000 presidents here. Moreover, the annual income of some celestial treasure pavilions reached tens of billions of star god veins. After deducting the cost, they could earn more than half. Most importantly, Qin Guan had said before that she had opened tens of millions of celestial treasure pavilions. Rich woman. Yi Xian could not imagine Qin Guan's wealth. This woman's wealth could only be compared to Little White in the Milky Way. Even Little White might not be able to compare. After all, Little White was an individual, but Qin Guan was different. This woman had many people to help her earn money. Thinking of this, he could not help but shake his head and sigh. Qin was good at everything, but she was not very interested in money. Otherwise, with Qin-er's ability to earn money, Qin-er. After a long time, Qin Guan suddenly said, dividends. Dividends. As soon as she said this, the president's present became excited. Everyone's eyes were filled with excitement and joy. Even Elder Zhang, who was like an old monk, had a subtle change of expression at this moment. Qin Guan suddenly looked at a woman not far from her. The woman was wearing a simple long dress. Her appearance was average, but her temperament was outstanding. Qin Guan smiled. Fu Qin, this time, the celestial treasure pavilion under your jurisdiction has the highest profit. You are this year's top seller. As she spoke, she took out a storage ring and placed it in front of Fu Qin. Everyone scanned it with their divine senses. The next moment, they were all excited, and their eyes were filled with undisguised envy. There were 3 billion star god veins in the storage ring. 3 billion. This was a super huge amount of money. When Yi Xian saw this amount, he was shocked at first, then shocked. 3 billion. How many people wouldn't be able to earn so many star god veins in their entire lives, but this Qin Guan actually rewarded them just like that. Fu Qing was also excited. It was obvious that the reward had exceeded her expectations. She immediately stood up and bowed slightly, before saying with a trembling voice, "Thank you, Pavilion Master." Qin Guan asked again, "Are you in the quantitative change state now?" Fu Qing nodded. "Yes." Qin Guan nodded slightly. Quantitative change leads to qualitative change. This process isn't that simple. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a scroll slowly floated in front of Fu Qing. This scroll contains some of my understanding of the qualitative change realm. It will be helpful to you. The expressions of all the presidents changed drastically when they heard this, and countless stood up. After all, the reason they joined the Celestial Treasure Pavilion was to earn money, but what was the purpose of earning money? Cultivate. Other than money, cultivation techniques were also very important. But now, Qin Guan directly rewarded him with a cultivation technique. It could be said that it was only a matter of time before Fu Qing reached the realm of qualitative change. Countless people were envious. Even those presidents who'd attained the quantitative change state were slightly envious. After all, they'd really had to rely on themselves to find their way bit by bit before they'd met Qin Guan all those years ago. Yet now, Qin Guan had directly provided them with guidance, so they'd be able to avoid many detours. It was truly too difficult to rely on oneself on the path of life without guidance from a noble person. Fu Qing immediately knelt down when she heard Qin Guan, and she was extremely excited and spoke with a trembling voice, "Pavilion Master, I." Qin Guan helped Fu Qing up and smiled. "According to my knowledge, the Celestial Treasure Pavilion that you manage doesn't just earn the most profits, it has the best reputation as well. You deserve it." Fu Qing bowed deeply. "Thank you, Pavilion Master." Qin Guan nodded slightly, and then she glanced at the others and said, "Meeting adjourned." All of them stood up, bowed slightly, and then left. Meanwhile, a woman walked over to Yi Xian and grinned, "Young Master Yi, do you still remember me?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Of course, Miss Qinglian." Qinglian smiled sweetly, "Young Master Yi, it's been 3 days, but you've become much stronger than before." Yi Xian laughed heartily. Qinglian glanced at Qin Guan, who was sitting at the side, bowed deeply, and then left. Qin Guan turned to look at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "I'll be busy for about 3 days. How about you go and play by yourself first?" Yi Xian smiled, "You said before that there'll be compensation. Do you still remember?" Qin Guan nodded. "What do you want?" Hearing this, Yi Xian was instantly in a dilemma. What should I want? Money? I'm in need of it. Treasures? He indeed coveted Qin Guan's treasures. Qin Guan suddenly smiled. "Why don't you remember it first, and let me know when you've thought of what you need?" Yi Xian nodded, "Sure." Qin Guan smiled faintly, then picked up the thick notebook in front of her. "I'll be busy for a while. After that, I'll take you to a place." With that, she turned and left. Yi Xian glanced at Qin Guan's small cloth bag, not knowing what he was thinking. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, don't think about this cloth bag. We really can't beat her. Just listening to the treasures of this little sister makes my scalp go numb." Yi Xian's face darkened. "What are you talking about? Am I that kind of person?" With that, he turned and left. Stroll around. Yi Xian decided to stroll around the vast 1,000 domains. He had to admit that the vast 1,000 domains was indeed very prosperous. In the starry sky, there was an endless stream of people coming and going. In the dark, he sensed some hidden auras, and each aura was very strong. Yi Xian slowly strolled alone in the starry sky, deep in thought. What Qin Guan said previously had deeply touched her. Unknown. From Qin Guan, he learned some unknown information, such as the Dao brush, the people who did not follow the rules, the heaven-defying cultivators, the person with the mandate of heaven, and Qing, suppressing a certain existence in the Milky Way. Yi Xian sighed softly. I need to work harder. If I don't work hard now, I'm afraid I'll have to rely on Dad and Qing, in the future. Moreover, he now somewhat understood Dad's intention. He also understood what Dad was worried about. As Qin Guan said, there was more than one chosen one, and it didn't mean that the chosen one would not die. Of course, he wasn't interested in this so-called chosen one, but he also knew that the saying, "My fate is in my own hands, not the heavens," was a complete nonsense. How many people in this world could really do that? At least, he couldn't do it at the moment. And Qing with Qing undefeatable strength, he could only suppress the other party. Whether he could not kill him or not, it meant that things were getting more complicated. If he didn't work hard now, his head might be smashed in the future. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was deep in thought, suddenly turned around and saw a man and a woman walking towards him. He had seen this man before. It was Qianji. And the most powerful force in the vast thousand domains was Qianji City. Obviously, this child Qianji was the young governor of Qianji City. Qianji walked towards Yi Xian and smiled. Young Master Yi, we meet again. Yi Xian smiled. It can't be such a coincidence, right? Qianji nodded. To be honest, I'm here to get to know young Master Yi. Yi Xian laughed. Child Qianji doesn't want to get to know me. You just want to know my relationship with Pavilion Master Qin, right? Qianji was stunned for a moment before he smiled and said, Has Mr. Yi always been so direct? Yi Xian smiled. Pavilion Master Qin and I are friends. Friends. Of course, he knew what Qianji was trying to do. Qianji must have seen him getting close to Qingguan. Qianji squinted his eyes. From what I know, Pavilion Master Qin rarely makes friends. Yi Xian shrugged. I don't know about that. Qianji kept quiet. Yi Xian smiled. Child Qianji, I have something to attend to. Let's talk later. After that, he turned around and left. After Yi Xian left, the woman beside Qianji asked in a deep voice, Cousin, who is this person? Qianji shook his head. I don't know. The woman asked, Do you want to investigate? Qianji kept quiet for a while. The woman understood. She turned around and left. In the starry sky far away, Xiao Ta suddenly asked, Young master, is Qianji wooing Sister Qin? Yi Xian said with a smile, Why do you ask? Xiao Ta smiled. I don't think he will be able to woo Sister Qin. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Xiao Ta said, Sister Qin's thoughts and pursuits are not something that people in this world can understand. It's just like Sister Yang Lianshuang. Yi Xian frowned. Aunt? Xiao Ta said, Yes. She's also from the Milky Way. Yi Xian smiled. If there's a chance in the future, let's go to the Milky Way. Xiao Ta smiled. All right. Yi Xian smiled. He had to admit that he was quite curious about the Milky Way. The people in this place were quite strange, especially this Qingguan. His thoughts were really strange. Yi Xian was about to speak when he narrowed his eyes and suddenly turned around. Not far behind him stood a middle-aged man. He knew this man too. It was Mu Su, the patriarch of the Spirit Demon clan. Not far behind Mu Su, there were two extremely obscure auras. Moreover, they were both in the quantitative change realm. Yi Xian frowned. The other party was really powerful. He actually chased them all the way here. However, he was puzzled. He was with Qingguan back then. Even if the other party wasn't afraid of him, he should at least be wary of Qingguan. Could it be that he didn't know Qingguan? At this moment, Mu Su suddenly said, That vein of the sky. Vein of the sky. Yi Xian smiled. It's with me. He didn't study the vein of the sky himself. Instead, he gave it to Enrich to study. If he didn't dote on his own woman, who would? He believed that Enrich's strength would advance by leaps and bounds before long and reach new heights. Enric's talent and perseverance were top-notch. She just lacked something to cheat. Mu Su stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly grinned. Don't stare at me. Come and hit me if you have the guts. You don't say. I haven't been hit in a long time. I'm really not used to it. Xiao Ta. Chapter 2205. Mu Su's expression instantly turned gloomy when he heard Yi Xian. How arrogant. How arrogant. Mu Su stared at Yi Xian with seemingly material killing intent in his eyes. You don't know what it means at all. Just you wait. You'll regret it. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Yi Xian suddenly said, What are you waiting for? If you're not happy today, then let's fight. Die. As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his thumb lightly. A sword howl resounded abruptly, and then a sword slashed towards Mu Su's back. Mu Su's eyes narrowed slightly while a strand of killing intent flashed through them. He suddenly turned around and smashed his fist forward. Bang! A strand of dazzling light surged out from his fist, and then the space in the surroundings transformed into an enormous black vortex. Yi Xian's sword was forcefully blocked by this punch. Mu Su stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and then he stomped his right foot against the ground and twisted his right hand. Bang! The green profound sword was instantly blasted flying. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword flew steadily back into his palm. Meanwhile, a fist suddenly swept over, and the formidable force contained within it caused the starry sky here to become illusory. Yi Xian held his sword in a reverse grip, charged forward, and slashed down. Bang! The fist was instantly blasted into pieces, but he himself was blasted 3 kilometers away as well. Their battle caused a huge commotion, and it instantly drew the attention of countless experts. Meanwhile, a black-robed old man appeared between them, and he glanced coldly at Yi Xian and Mu Su. Don't both of you know that fighting isn't allowed here? Mu Su opened his palm, and then a command token floated slowly towards the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man frowned slightly when he saw the command token. The 5 Elements Order. A member of the Lord of 5 Elements. I have to give the Lord of 5 Elements face. When he thought up to here, the black-robed old man turned around to gaze at Yi Xian, and he spoke coldly, Take him down. As his voice fell, more than a dozen powerful auras suddenly swept toward Yi Xian from the dark. Yi Xian frowned slightly when he saw this, and he didn't waste his breath as he drew his sword and slashed. Boom! This sword strike directly sent an expert charging in front of him, flying several thousand feet away. The experts in the dark were shocked when they witnessed this scene. How dare they attack the people of Qinji City? Was he tired of living? Opposite Yi Xian, the black-robed elder's face immediately turned cold. He glared at Yi Xian and said, Who gave you the guts? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward. An afterimage flashed through the battlefield, and the powerful force he emanated tore the space in his path apart. In the distance, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and a cold murderous intent flashed across his eyes. With a thought, the green profound sword in his scabbard turned into a sword ray and flew out. Quantitative change. Even though his cultivation wasn't at the quantitative change realm, this attack of his had undergone quantitative change. So, the starry sky and the surroundings instantly cracked apart as soon as he attacked. Rumble. The afterimage shook violently, and then it instantly retreated 3 kilometers away. However, a flying sword suddenly slashed down towards him as soon as he stopped moving. The black-robed old man's pupils constricted, and then he crossed his arms and placed them before him. Bang! An expanse of sword light was blasted apart, and then the black-robed old man was blasted flying again. When he finally stopped moving, his arms had been slashed into pieces. The black-robed old man was slightly stunned. He gazed towards the distance and was just about to speak when a sword was pressed against the center of his forehead. Mu Su's face instantly turned gloomy when he witnessed this scene. Yi Xian's strength is much stronger than before. Earlier, it was very strenuous for Yi Xian to fight quantitative change realm experts. Yet now, quantitative change realm experts are practically unable to fight back against Yi Xian. How did this fellow's strength grow so quickly? In front of Yi Xian, the old man in the black robe stared at Yi Xian. "This is Qianji City, try and touch me." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "What makes you think that I wouldn't dare to touch you?" A ferocious smile arose on the corners of the black-robed old man's mouth. "Then try and see if you dare." Meanwhile, a voice resounded from the side. "Young Master Yi, this is a misunderstanding." Yi Xian turned around and saw a man and woman walking over slowly from afar. It was Qianji. Qianji had a faint smile on his face. "Young Master Yi, this is a misunderstanding." "We." Yi Xian suddenly swung his sword. Hiss. The black-robed old man's head flew into the air, and his soul was instantly absorbed by the green profound sword. The air here instantly froze when they witnessed this scene. He really killed him? Moreover, he even stopped the junior city governor of Thousand Opportunities City. The smile on Qianji's face froze as well. Yi Xian looked at Qianji and smiled. "Young Master Qianji, would you believe me if I told you that this is a misunderstanding?" Qianji looked at Yi Xian. "I thought that young Master Yi was a friend, but it seems like I was wrong." Yi Xian chuckled. "Young Master Qianji, don't put on an act in front of me. It's true. I'm so embarrassed that I feel like I'm about to explode. Don't tell me that you just found out about this from the beginning of the battle. If I'm not wrong, you've been hiding in the dark since I fought with your men. But you didn't stop me or say that it's a misunderstanding. Why? There are two reasons. Firstly, you wanted to see my strength and background. Secondly, you just wanted to cause trouble for me because I'm close to Qingguan. That made you uncomfortable." Qianji shook his head and smiled. "You might not be angry at me for killing him now. On the contrary, you might be happy about it. Why is that? Because in that case, you would have a legitimate reason to target me. Moreover, not only do you have a legitimate reason to go against me, you're also standing on the moral high ground. Even Miss Qingguan wouldn't be able to stop you. Or perhaps, when you see Miss Qingguan later, you might even complain about it or act pitiful. By then, you don't even need to do anything to make Miss Qingguan hate me. Am I right?" Qianji looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. The lady beside Qianji suddenly said coldly, "Who do you think you are? Are you worthy of being targeted by my cousin? What a joke. As for Pavilion Leader Qin, it's her honor that my cousin likes her. But she still wants to pretend. We're both women, I don't know that." "Shut up." Qianji suddenly shouted and stopped the lady. The lady was stunned. Meanwhile, a voice sounded from the side. "Young Master Yi is a distinguished guest of my Celestial Treasure Pavilion, a super distinguished guest." Qianji's expression changed drastically when he heard that. All the spectators turned around to look, and they saw a woman walking over slowly from afar. It was Qingguan. There were two other people by Qingguan's side. One of them was Elder Zhang, and the other was a slender woman in black armor. The woman had a long saber hanging from her waist, and her expression was cold. Qianji quickly went over to greet Qingguan when he saw her. "Pavilion Leader Qin, my cousin has offended you with her words. Please forgive her." Qingguan grinned. "I won't forgive her." As soon as she finished speaking, she looked at the woman by Qingguan's side. The woman didn't back down and looked Qingguan in the eye. Suddenly, the woman by Qingguan's side vanished on the spot. In the next moment, Qianji's expression changed drastically. He was about to attack when the woman's head flew into the air. Blood sprayed out like a fountain, and it was extremely bloody. Everyone in the surroundings was flabbergasted. She killed him just like that? Yi Xian's face was covered in astonishment as well. He wasn't shocked because the armored woman had killed the other woman, he was shocked because of her strength. It was too absurd. Because he hadn't been able to react in time. What sort of heaven-defying strength is that? Qian Ji was completely dumbfounded. She really killed him. He hadn't expected that Qin Guan's subordinates would actually not give him any face at all. After all, she was his cousin's sister, and she was from Thousand Opportunity City. Qin Guan rolled his eyes at her. Shen Xiu, I didn't ask you to kill him. The woman called Shen Xiu hesitated for a moment and said, that saber was too swift. I couldn't stop it. The others were speechless. Qian Ji suddenly spoke in a low voice, Pavilion Leader Qin, I've always respected you, but your actions today show that you're looking down on my Thousand Opportunity City. You must give my Thousand Opportunity City an explanation, otherwise. Suddenly, Qian Ji's voice stopped abruptly because a saber had been placed against his neck. Qian Ji's expression changed drastically, and he was horrified to the extreme. He wasn't able to fight back at all. Exactly how terrifying is this woman called Shen Xiu? Yi Xian was extremely shocked as well because this woman called Shen Xiu's strength was slightly absurd. Her saber was too swift. Show mercy. Suddenly, a voice resounded from afar, and then a middle-aged man tore through space and appeared before everyone. It was the city governor of Thousand Opportunity City, Qian Mu. After he appeared here, Qian Mu didn't even spare a glance at Qian Ji as he walked swiftly towards Qin Guan, and then he cupped his fists, Pavilion Leader Qin, my son has offended you. Please be magnanimous and forgive him this time. I'll definitely discipline him strictly once I bring him back. Everyone here was shocked when they heard this. Qian Mu is actually apologizing? Actually, many didn't know much about Qin Guan. They only knew that the Immortal Treasure Pavilion was extremely wealthy, but they didn't know the exact strength of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. In the eyes of many, the Immortal Treasure Pavilion was just a merchant group. That wasn't wrong, but it wasn't just a merchant group, it was a merchant group that dealt with technology. Qin Guan gazed at Qian Mu and smiled, it's actually a small matter to me because I won't get angry with them. However, all of you have offended my friend. As she spoke, she turned around to look at Yi Xian, are you still angry? Yi Xian nodded. Qin Guan thought for a moment and said, are you really angry? Yi Xian nodded again. Qin Guan nodded slightly, and then he gazed at Qian Mu, City Governor Qian Mu, please lend me something. Qian Mu stared fixedly at Qin Guan, what do you want to borrow? Qin Guan grinned, I want to borrow your son's head. As soon as she finished speaking, a ray of light flashed, and then Qian Ji's head flew into the air. Shen Xiu opened her palm, and Qian Ji's head flew into her palm. She walked slowly towards Yi Xian and bowed slightly, young master, please calm your anger. Yi Xian remained silent. Qin Guan suddenly looked around and said, young master Yi is the most distinguished guest of Celestial Treasure Pavilion. He is under the protection of Celestial Treasure Pavilion, and at the same time, he is also my friend. As she spoke, she took out the big sniper and said, whoever dares to make him unhappy in front of me, I will send that person to the crematorium. Everyone was speechless. Today, I had a small outburst, and the outburst was filled with courage. I hope everyone doesn't mind if I say a few words of complaint. 2 days ago, I saw a comment. Didn't I describe Qin Guan's appearance and image? In that comment, he said that I was very, very lousy. He said that if I had nothing else to write, I should quickly end it. Don't fill up the word count and waste his traffic. When I saw this comment, I was dumbfounded. Everyone knows that I rarely describe a person's appearance. Basically, it's a black-robed old man, a white-robed old man, a luxuriously robed old man, a long-haired woman, a purple-robed woman. Because of this, I was suggested by a reader. He suggested that when I wrote about a character, should describe their appearance and image in more detail. So, when Qin Guan appeared, I described his appearance and image. However, when I saw that person say that I was purposely filling up the word count, I was dumbfounded. Moreover, the awesome thing is that only he can scold you, and you can't scold him. If he scolds you, you have to endure it. If you scold him, he will say that you have no manners. With this kind of manners, how can you write a book? If other readers speak up for me, he will immediately say that the reader is a bootlicker and AB*****. Sometimes, I find it a little unbelievable. So it can be like this? Did he learn his shamelessness from Xiao Ta? To be honest, I want to write a new type of cultivator, keystroke Dao. Just say keystroke, I don't want to be shameless, you can do whatever you want. After complaining, it was time to write. Chapter 2206. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He killed him just like that? In his impression, Qin Guan had a good temper and rarely got angry. Therefore, he did not expect Qin Guan to really kill Qian Ji. Not only Yi Xian, but Qian Mu was also petrified on the spot. He killed him just like that? He did not give any face at all? After Shen Xiu killed Qian Ji, his gaze fell on Qian Mu with an unfriendly expression. Qian Mu turned to look at Qin Guan with an ugly expression. Pavilion Master Qin, is this really necessary? Qin Guan smiled. City Lord Qian Mu, I brought my friend to the Great Thousand Domains, but your son investigated him secretly. Not only that, he even purposely got his men to cause trouble for him. As she spoke, she shook her head. City Lord Qian Mu, I hate this. Qian Mu stared at Qin Guan and suppressed his anger. Does he deserve to die? Qin Guan sighed. City Lord Qian Mu, you gave me some convenience when I established the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. If not, I would not have appeared today. Do you think that I am harming you and Qianji City? As she spoke, she shook her head. I am saving you and your Qianji City. Everyone was speechless. Everyone had a weird expression on their faces. Killing someone else's son and saying that it was for their own good? At this moment, Xiao Ta sighed. How terrifying, only he understood what Qin Guan meant. If Qian Ji did not die, the conflict between Yi Xian and Qian Ji would definitely escalate. Qian Ji was also a second generation. He was proud and arrogant. How could he give in to someone? Once the conflict escalated, between Qianji City and Yi Xian, only one could live. Yi Xian naturally understood what Qin Guan meant. He walked to Qin Guan and pulled Qin Guan's sleeve with his right hand. He was a little dissatisfied. You make it sound like I am a bad person. Qin Guan blinked. I know the whole story. It was the spirit demon race who came looking for trouble with you first. Thousand Chance City wanted to take sides and give face to the Lord of Five Elements. As for this Qian Ji, as you said, he wanted to test you and then cause you some trouble to test your limits. If your background is ordinary, he will continue to target you and even kill you. Yi Xian was silent. Qin Guan turned to look at Qian Mu. City Lord Qian Mu, if you are not convinced, you can make your move now. My Celestial Treasure Pavilion will accompany you to the end. Qian Mu remained silent for a long time before he said, What are you saying, Pavilion Master Qin? This was all a misunderstanding. Now that the misunderstanding has been resolved, everything is fine. With that, he turned around and left. Qin Guan smiled and said nothing more. Aren't you afraid of his revenge? Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. He's not afraid of me. He's afraid of Shen Xiu. Shen Xiu's strength makes him feel threatened, so he doesn't dare to make a move. Qin Guan smiled. Why isn't he afraid of you? Yi Xian glanced at Shen Xiu and said, Why isn't he afraid of you? I think you're the most dangerous one. Qin Guan blinked. Because I don't cultivate. I don't have any realms. Are you sure you don't know how to fight? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment. I don't. Qin Guan nodded. I don't. However, I know all realms like the back of my hand. Moreover, I know what's beyond realms. Moreover, I'm writing a new realm. I want to create a complete cultivation system. Yi Xian. Actually, many people don't know that I have many powerful treasures. Qin Guan continued. Why? Yi Xian was puzzled. Qin Guan blinked. That's because those who knew about it are all dead. Of course, besides you. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the patriarch of the spirit demon race, Mu Su, intended to flee. Yi Xian looked at Mu Su and said, You want to leave? Mu Su stared at Yi Xian and said, What? You want to kill me? Yi Xian smiled and said, Isn't that obvious? As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Hiss. A strand of sword light tore through the battlefield. Mu Su's eyes narrowed slightly. You? As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot as well. Bang! An expanse of sword light suddenly exploded apart, and then both of them retreated explosively at the same time. However, the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand had vanished the instant he flew backward. Mu Su's pupils constricted, and then he suddenly smashed his right hand forward. A strand of terrifying force swept out from his fist. Bang! An expanse of sword light distorted, and the green profound sword was blasted back to Yi Xian. However, Mu Su's right hand had completely cracked apart, and only his bones remained. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Mu Su's eyes as he glanced at his cracked right hand. He looked at Yi Xian and slowly raised his left hand. In the next moment, the starry sky and the surroundings seethed. Meanwhile, some mysterious experts suddenly appeared from the shadows, and they immediately started to seal off the spacetime in the surroundings. If the surrounding spacetime wasn't sealed off, a battle between experts of this level could directly shatter the major thousand territories. The destructive force was too strong. In the distance, Yi Xian stood with his sword in hand, and the green profound sword in his hand trembled slightly. Meanwhile, a wisp of ferocity flashed through Mu Su's eyes. Die! As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slapped his left hand forward. Bang! At this instant, a terrifying force suddenly surged out from the spacetime above Yi Xian, and the spacetime where Yi Xian resided was instantly shattered. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly wielded his sword. 3 swords as one. Moreover, all 3 of them were quantitative attacks. As soon as he attacked, Qin Guan's eyes instantly lit up, interesting. Bang! Meanwhile, an expanse of light suddenly erupted in front of Yi Xian. The powerful ray of light tore through everything, and the sealed spacetime in the surroundings was instantly blasted into pieces. A moment later, a figure retreated madly. It was Mu Su. Mu Su retreated hundreds of thousands of feet away, and the moment he stopped, a sword stabbed into the center of his brows without any warning. Hiss! Mu Su's figure stiffened. He'd lost. Yi Xian gazed at Mu Su and was about to allow the green profound sword to absorb Mu Su's soul. However, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared here, and then the green profound sword within Mu Su's body was blasted out by a mysterious force. A moment later, a black vortex entered Mu Su's body. At the same time, a figure silently condensed into form in the sky. Yi Xian gazed at the figure and frowned slightly. The Lord of the 5 Elements. Brother Zhang, who'd remained silent until now, spoke abruptly. The Lord of the 5 Elements. He's on the same level as the Time Master. Yi Xian gazed at the Lord of the 5 Elements and remained silent. The Lord of the 5 Elements stared at Yi Xian as well. How arrogant of you. Yi Xian chuckled. What do you mean by that? It seems like it's your subordinates who intend to kill me, right? The Lord of the 5 Elements glanced coldly at Yi Xian. You'll be able to obtain that heaven vein, but you won't be able to enjoy it. As soon as he finished speaking, he glanced at Qin Guan, and then he turned around and left. Shenxiu frowned slightly while the saber within his sheath trembled slightly. He was about to attack when Qin Guan stopped him. Qin Guan smiled. Forget it. We have important matters to attend to. As she spoke, she gazed at Yi Xian. I noticed that your cultivation technique is greatly lacking. If you're willing, then I can chat with you and improve your cultivation and strength. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Of course not. Qin Guan smiled, Come with me. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Meanwhile, Shenxiu was about to leave silently. Meanwhile, Qin Guan glanced at Shenxiu. Where are you going? Shenxiu hesitated for a moment and said, To eat. Qin Guan glared at Shenxiu. You're going to kill the Lord of the Five Elements, right? Yi Xian was speechless. Shenxiu spoke solemnly. He glanced at the pavilion master before he left, and I noticed a strand of killing intent in his eyes. Qin Guan rolled his eyes at Shenxiu and said, So, you intend to kill him? Shenxiu nodded. Qin Guan nodded slightly. Shenxiu, from this moment onward, I'll tell you one last time. Don't act rashly without my orders, and don't think that you're very good at fighting. Because there are many who are better at fighting than you are. Your temper is too rash, and if you encounter some extraordinary experts, then that temper of yours will kill you. Understand? Shenxiu nodded slightly. I understand. Qin Guan sighed softly, and then she turned around to gaze at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi. Yi Xian smiled. Just call me Yi Xian. Don't keep calling me Young Master Yi. Young Master Yi? How distant is that? Qin Guan grinned. Then I'll call you Yi Xian. You can call me Qin Guan as well. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Qin Guan, I remember that you said that's your real name, right? Qin Guan nodded. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, Then what's your nickname? Qin Guan smiled. Siphon. Qin Siphon. Yi Xian blinked. Then I'll call you Siphon. You don't mind, right? Qin Guan hesitated, and then said, I think, you should call me by my real name. Yi Xian nodded slightly. All right. I'll listen to you. Qin Guan smiled. Let's go. After that, she turned around and left with Yi Xian. On the way, Qin Guan suddenly said, Just now I saw you perform 3 sword moves. 1 slash to the past, 1 slash to the future, and 1 slash to the present, right? Yi Xian nodded. Please enlighten me, Miss Qin Guan. Qin Guan nodded. I have a way to make your 3 sword moves at least 10 times stronger. Yi Xian's expression froze. Is this how you play? 10 times? Qin Guan said seriously, I'm not lying. It's because your understanding of time and space is not deep enough. If you know more, the power of your 3 sword moves will be very powerful. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Please enlighten me, Miss Qin. Qin Guan smiled and said, Spacetime is the combination of time and space. It is divided into the past spacetime, the present spacetime, and the future spacetime. The reason why there are the past, the future, and the present is because there is a river of time. Do you know the essence of the river of time? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. Qin Guan smiled slightly. The essence is still time and space. Yi Xian, Qin Guan smiled. The so-called river of time itself is formed by time and space. Just like the old hen, where does it come from? It came out of the egg. Where did the egg come from? The egg is laid by the old hen. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.